CuseSportsTalk.com. Go check out, we're live on the Cuse Sports Talk YouTube. Mike, we're everywhere. We're everywhere you want to be on a Saturday morning. And why not? Like, Cuse-BC football's got a little meeting today, so this is kind of fun.
If you're not hanging out with us, what are you doing?
I don't know.
I mean, it's not like it's 70 degrees outside. It's going to be chilly if you want to go apple picking. If you got kids, you're probably already up, so you should be listening to us. You know, we're the place to be. This is where you want to be. This is the game of the day. They can talk all they want about all this stuff that goes on in the SEC and Georgia Ole Miss and all that type of stuff. Syracuse Boston College is what you want.
Well, you know, here we are, and coming off the crazy game last week. What a wild few weeks it's been here for Syracuse football. I guess let's start back there. Tell me what you're thinking. It's 21-3. It's November. We all understand it's different now. But to be a human last Saturday and not have, well, here we go again, run through your mind at least once, I don't believe you. Like, it had to cross your mind at some point.
It did. I was sitting in the stands with my son, and at halftime, he was distraught and upset and not having a great time. And then when it went 21-3, he was even more so, and he even made the comment, something to the effect of, "Why are we still here? What is the point?" And I said to him, "I've been coming to games and watching games in the Dome long enough to know weird things can happen, and especially weird things in Syracuse, Virginia Tech games." Mm-hmm. So I said, let's just wait, see how the rest of the third quarter plays out, and we'll reevaluate at the start of the fourth. And then when Justice Ross Simmons broke the tackle and went 55 yards for a touchdown, it seemed to change everything.
Everything.
Like, the entire building went from, as you said, here we go again, it's November, it's different, but nothing has changed, to it almost felt at that moment like the entire crowd thought, oh my God, we're going to come back and win this game. In that one moment, that one play just seemed to spark everything. The Syracuse sideline completely changed. The coaching staff seemed to get back into believing that they were going to come back. And again, there's been a lot of things throughout this Fran Brown era already that have pointed to this is different than just past coaching changes and where the program has been. Mm-hmm. Maybe none more so than that, because that's not a game, I think, for basically the last 15 years that they come back and win.
I said this. I've said this to a lot of people this week. I was having this conversation with Don McPherson the other day that, whatever the time period is, the Dino Babers stats were very specific. Like, even his time prior to here, like when he was winning at halftime, he won. When he was losing at halftime, he lost. And you're right. It goes back with Syracuse even beyond that. Like, you generally had a sense mid-first quarter of most Syracuse games, like how the day was going to go. And that doesn't always mean negative. Sometimes you're like, well, all right, it's their day. The Fran Brown era, it's like, hold on to something. Well, I don't know what's coming the next couple hours.
No, I mean, you have the Georgia Tech game where they basically controlled the game throughout, and then all of a sudden there was the not getting the onside kick, and then they're sitting at 3rd and 10. You're like, they're going to find a way to blow this. Now, they made the plays that they needed to pull that out, but then the Virginia Tech game, the only game where you really kind of knew early on this is how this is going to go is the Pitt game. That one you kind of knew, like, end of the first quarter, this is bad.
And I'll say this, like, as bad as it was, and it was bad.
It was.
It was one of those things, because of how some of those others went, I think you stuck with it a little longer than you would have in other times, even though you're like, well, this is not going well.
Yeah, I mean, I have to watch every minute of every game.
Like, I know we're watching it anyway, but it was like, well, my mental process, well, maybe. Yeah. It lasted maybe a quarter longer than it should have.
It's funny, though. Listen, covering sports and being paid to do so and watch football games, like, it's pretty awesome. Yeah. I'm not going to lie.
There's worse things.
But the only time where it's not great is when the team that you're covering is getting blown out, the game is over, and you can't turn it off. You can't leave the Dome. And those are times when I have friends of mine that text me, you have to watch this. I already turned it off. I'm going out. But that said, yeah, I mean, you're looking at it at halftime, right? It was 31-0 or 31-3, whatever it was. And said, well, I think they get the ball to start the second half. If they come out and score, maybe get a quick stop or a turnover, you never know. You could start making it a little interesting.
Right.
And the thing that kept popping into my mind was, Pitt has come back from some pretty large deficits. Wouldn't it be weird if their first loss was
maybe they'll blow
giving that up? So you're going through this stuff, and you also, some of those pick sixes were a little fluky, right?
It's like, well, that won't keep happening.
You would think. But Yeah, it's one of those that I think there is some more belief from the fan base in Fran Brown and this team and the players on this team, the direction the program is going. And I think that was tested at halftime of the Virginia Tech game, even midway through the third quarter. But it's never been higher after the way they came back after that.
Yeah, I remember Syracuse did score on that opening drive of the second half against Pittsburgh, but the complaint at the time was like, oh, they took too long.
So long.
And that's that's the crazy complaint of people that think you're still in the game, right? Not that the game is already over. So we got Virginia Tech. They're back in it, and now here you are, right? 6-2. You know, the hopes of ACC championship and all that, it would take 8 million different things happening. But, man, you can still have a really nice season here.
If you can figure out a way to go into that Miami game at 9-2.
Oh, man. Big game. It's a big game.
It's a massive game. You're going to be top 20 in the country most likely by that point. And I think you got a shot at getting game day finally here. Now, I know every time we talk about that, things seem to go awry, but
yes,
that is something that's realistically on the table. They're not coming for UConn. There wasn't another game on the schedule really that was sexy enough to warrant their consideration. That is, but you have to take care of business, and I think it starts today because it feels like if you can figure out a way to win this game against Boston College. Cal just won last night against Wake Forest to get their first ACC win.
Finally.
They're not a great team, but they are a good team. They're one of those, to steal a term from you, they're one of those feisty teams,
yeah,
right?
They've just been hanging around like they should. I mean, famous words. They should have lots of wins.
They should, yes. But they have struggled in some aspects. They gave up 36 points to a not very good Wake Forest offense. And
yeah, Wake's not good.
They're not. So sometimes when you're a team that has really struggled to close games, and then you finally break through and do it, the following week, there's a little bit of an emotional letdown. So if you're a Syracuse fan looking for positivity going into that Cal game, it's that Cal just had that happen. So that potential emotional letdown would come against you. This game is odd because Boston College has extra rest and extra preparation. But going into that extra rest and extra preparation, they were not playing good football.
No, 3 straight losses.
3 straight losses, lost to a meh Virginia team, and we're kind of dominated in that game in several aspects. Their quarterback is really, really odd in that he can take over games with his legs. Not necessarily a great thrower of the football, has some accuracy issues. But even with that, they're a good running team. They're not a great running team. Defensively, they've given up a bunch of points to some people. It's a very odd team. They kind of live off of turnovers. So I think going into this one, this is one where it feels like Syracuse is the better team. And if they play well, they should win. And if you do that, you're setting yourself up for, as we said, the ability to win, the next 3 games and set up a monster game in the Dome.
Yeah, I think all of those things, and then it's one of those things. You think that. You look at the point spread and you say they're 2-point underdogs.
I know.
I guess not everybody thinks that. So it's one like, what am I missing going into this game? And
I know. But
it
Vegas
scrambles you up in here a little bit. Exactly. The fact that they always know what they're doing has scrambled my brain here a little bit this week.
Yeah. So it tells you, are they trying to get people to bet on Syracuse because they think most are going to think that way?
Yeah.
Or do they think that the public is still, because almost everyone saw what Syracuse did against Pittsburgh.
Right.
Not very many people saw what Syracuse did to come back against Virginia Tech because that was on the CW or whatever it was. And even though Syracuse came back and it was a great win for everyone that follows that program, it didn't move the needle at all nationally. And when you looked at the national highlights and they were showing all the big games and all the important games, whatever, didn't even make their cut for a game to be discussed. So it's a little off the radar, so you wonder if there are still some people thinking, oh, yeah, I remember Boston College. Didn't they beat Florida State and they almost beat Missouri? And okay, yeah, they're a pretty good team. And they got Syracuse coming to their place, and Syracuse just got blown out by Pittsburgh. And I only have to give 2 points? Oh, I'm going to jump all over that. Maybe that's what Vegas is doing. I don't know. But you don't think that Fran Brown is going to use the fact that they're underdogs going on the road against a team that's lost 3 in a row and use that and say, hey, they're disrespecting you.
Fran Brown?
He's going to use that.
No.
Absolutely.
No, he'd never do it. If Fran, I mean, how good was Fran on Monday this week being mad at Virginia Tech's kicker after the fact for his halftime kicking through the Pride of the Orange marching band excavates?
Which he should have. I mean, that
it was what? Like,
ridiculous.
what was that dude doing? I finally saw videos of it the other day. I'm like, you're in the middle of, like, you're not at the edge of you're right in the middle of the band. Like, what are you doing?
You're not only in the middle of the band, but there were two other things about that kind of struck me. One, after the band had exited the field, they were kind of congregating right under the goalpost at that end zone.
Okay.
As they kind of wait to go back up into the stands.
Yeah, they got to go up the stairs into their seats.
Right, so they kind of, congregate there, and then they, one by one, go up into the stands. While they were congregated right under the goalposts, he then kicks a ball into the netting and goes down into the band. I'm like, it took them all of 30 seconds from that point to get into the stands. You couldn't wait another 30 seconds. So, and I know he apologized after, said, this does not represent who I am, but it went on for so long, and there were so many things. They were very calculated.
Like, I watched the video again. Like, multiple people asked him to move. Like, while it was
yes,
and apparently there is a rule against it. I think that you shouldn't be warming. Like, there's a time on the clock or whatever. It's supposed to. Your band's supposed to be done. Yada yada yada.
Then there was something else that wasn't part of that video, but I saw a fan post it. That was a video of a Virginia Tech staffer and like a member of the band, not like someone in the band, but someone like in charge of instructing the band or organizing the band or whatever, higher up, someone, administration for the band, so to speak. And they were talking to each other and getting heated and in each other's face. And at one point it looked like they were going to start throwing fists or something. And I'm like, what could the Virginia Tech staffer have been saying to defend that? Was kind of he was the one getting the more irate of the two. So the whole thing was just bizarre.
And this is why it was a tragedy that for the first 10 years of being in the ACC, they only played Virginia Tech like once. So this is like we need this stuff more. Like this year, it's Miami's first trip to the Dome. They've not been to the Dome in the ACC. It's year 12. It's year 12. Miami hasn't been to the Dome.
The way that they did the schedule,
it's just
the divisions, and I mean, it was terrible.
It's like, hey, I know, like, you guys weren't paying attention to it, but these games used to mean a lot to these three teams. Can we see? Can we play them ever?
Like, it's good that Syracuse got Pittsburgh and Boston College.
Yeah,
but the fact that it's basically like, we're in the same conference as Miami and Virginia Tech. We never play, but we're there.
It's like, we swear we are. Didn't you guys used to be in the same league? We're in the same league right now. Are you sure? Well, I know we haven't been there.
But at least they got Wake Forest and North Carolina State.
But, that always just like, that's the one question of all the questions going back, Mike and I we'll never get an answer to this question.
No.
I need to know how it was decided who got the Atlantic Division and who got the Coastal Division between Syracuse and Pittsburgh back in the day. What happened?
I don't know.
Like, who decided it? Was it just random? Was Pittsburgh doing crafty things behind the scenes? Like, what happened? It's my biggest unanswered question of Syracuse sport. It's like, it's short list of my biggest unanswered questions of Syracuse sports of the last 15 years.
Pittsburgh AD has blackmail on somebody.
Yeah, like what happened? What happened? I need to know, and I'll never know. It's lost to history. It
is.
Like, who's still like working in the ACC that knows the answer to this question? Like, anybody? Is anybody still here?
Or maybe someone who used to, who is now retired and maybe has no reason to hold that information in. You can make that. Hey, how did this happen? Well, there was some wires exchanged.
Okay, this could be an electric summer series. I'm going to keep this in mind going forward. Investigation into the Coastal Division, Syracuse and Pittsburgh. All right, we're off the rails already. This is what happens when you start. This is what the old Big East did to you. We got another one of those matchups today, Syracuse and Boston College. Let's get our first break out of the way on the TK Tailgate, presented by our friends at the TK Tavern out in Camillus. We'll be back right after this, and stay tuned as well on Cuse Sports Talk on CuseSportsTalk.com. Cuse Sports Talk on the YouTube. We'll be hanging out during the break. Back on TK after this. What's up, chat?
I got to pull up the chat myself.
Yes, Mike. We should have sent Mike in as the kicker. Yes, that's always the answer, Mike.
I don't think that would have gone.
No, you don't think Mike? I mean, he's hard in training for his big kick coming up in a couple weeks. He's not kicked a ball yet. He's hard in training.
Definitely would not have gone well if it was me. I can tell you that much.
Thank you for the resub, Devin.
Hi, Jen.
Satchel. What is up, people? What is up on this fine, fine November morning? Yeah, Hudson Cuse, I got a feeling it's going to be close. I haven't changed my prediction from September that like all the games are going to be close. Who's the offensive coach that always wears purple? That is one of their...
I don't know. I hadn't noticed.
GAs. It's one of their signaler
assistants.
types. Yeah, it's one of the GAs, whatever. Yeah, teams do that. They'll put people in specific color shirts, so it's easy to quickly pick them out on the sideline, and those colors are not the team colors. That is one of their... Let me see. I know who you're talking about. I need a roster with faces to possibly answer that question.
Boston College is kind of a weird team. Like, they've got one of the best pass rushers in the conference.
Yeah, but nobody else gets anywhere.
Literally, no one else has more than one sack on the season.
It's like
he has 9 of their 13.
They got one guy, and everybody else can't do it.
At least Virginia Tech, even though they've got the one guy, the rest of them had some good numbers, but BC does.
They have one guy, 9 sacks, and then I think they have 14 sacks total.
Yeah,
and one guy has 9. All right, coach's staff. Yes, Doug Marone today, Jen. We do get to Marone it up.
You know what else is gross about Boston College?
Do tell, Joe.
Lots of things.
Yeah, the receivers, they've got literally one guy with more than 20 catches. They have one single guy.
And he's only averaging 10 yards a catch.
Yeah, that's disgusting. Like, it's kind of like...
Their biggest deep threat, according to like yards per catch, is Ward, their running back.
Yeah,
he's
he must
averaging
have like a couple of screen passes.
He's averaging 19 yards a catch, but like everyone else, it's like 10 yards a catch.
It's also weird because I think I haven't followed them crazy all year long, but based on the past and yards per carry, I feel like Robichaux was probably the starter to begin the season.
That's my...
And then it feels like Ward's just better. I'm sorry. Oh, no onesies.
We don't onesie in the mornings, Jeff.
Looks like their one deep threat is this guy named Reed Harris. He's a freshman. He's 6'5" from Montana.
Sure.
But
Recruiting
he has 5 catches. 3 of the 4 have gone for at least, or 3 of the 5, I should say, have gone for at least 40 yards. 2 of which were over 60 yards. But he doesn't have a single game where he has more than 1 catch in it.
He makes the most of his opportunities. Yeah. Just keep going deep. That's how they make him sneaky. He only catches 1 per game, but they're like...
Just randomly throw him out on a 3rd and 20 and say,
every now and again we'll target you. Just keep running.
Go.
I love that strategy.
But yeah, they're running backs. It's so hard to figure.
I think when you switch off the YouTube tab, it like pauses it or something. I don't know.
Oh, you gotta be looking at that.
It does do that. Because
you hit the live button.
That's kind of fire, but not for live.
I tried listening to Fran while I'm writing in another tab, and it won't.
All right, back at it. TK Tailgate Saturday morning. Brian Higgins, Mike McAllister. We got big plans for you all across the board, all across our stations here today. We'll be with you on Cuse Sports Talk, wherever you're accessing that, up until noon. And then, of course, back after for postgame. Here on TK, the Syracuse Sports Network broadcast emanating live from Chestnut Hill. We'll get cracking at 10 with Tim and Matt and Adam. At 10, I will head down the hall and continue the party on Cuse Sports Talk on ESPN Radio here in the Cuse up until the noon kick time. So we got lots of options for you here on a Saturday, full day of Cuse football. And again, locate your CW, Mike. Syracuse is the official team of the CW for the last week, next week, and next week. So we got all that. For those of you, this should, I don't know if this should be said out loud, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. If you're watching on the CW today, the announcer is Tom Brenneman.
Mm-hmm.
Boston College's quarterback is Thomas Castellanos.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not amused by that,
it's amazing.
Like, you've got 2 hours and 40 minutes to get amused by that. Like, let's go.
I wonder what his week has been preparing for this. If he's like, are you kidding me right now?
Is he going to reference this during the game or just totally ignore it?
I mean,
I'm guessing total ignore.
I'm guessing he is too, but I'll say this. It would be kind of epic if he's like, and there's a shot deep to right, home run Castellanos.
It's a high, deep ball to left field. Wait a minute.
That it would be kind of funny if he did that. But
oh, man.
At the same time, I don't think he wants to bring that up and remember any of that happened.
No. Well, at least the Castellanos guy won't have his hands on the ball the entire game today.
Right? Every single play. And someone is on social media is going to do something where they take some comment that he makes about Castellanos and splice it with and have some fun with that. That's going to happen.
If nobody does that, then social media world, I am disappointed. Like, shame on you. I'm not going to do it, but I need you to do it so I can enjoy it.
Elon controls so much of what goes on with Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Like, this should be your focus today.
Like, somebody get on top of this. It would be a great palate cleanser here on the social media world to bring back Tom Brenneman talk out there. All right, Fran said something earlier this week that somebody asked him about. I don't even know what they were asking him about. It might have been a Zede Haynes thing. It doesn't even matter what it was, but he was talking about, hey, if you've got like 80 plays a game on offense and I got guys that are close, why wouldn't I give my backup left guard 20 snaps or this? Like,
yeah,
it seems he is really plugged in to this idea of modern era roster management, transfer portal. But like in real time, right? I feel like a lot of coaches, they'll get to the end of the season and be like, all right, let's try to keep this guy. He seems to be like, well, it's 3rd and 6. I wonder how we can also have this guy here next year. Like, it's a interesting way to go about it that I find fascinating to watch here in real time.
I've never seen an offensive line rotate like
this.
I mean, it's
never. Usually
it's
five
like, guys.
Yeah, you talk continuity. You always like, well, you hope you have continuity on the offensive line.
Right. And so you have your 5 guys. They're your starters, barring injury or some sort of catastrophic underperformance, right? Where you got to throw someone else in because they're just a turntable and it's just bad. Mm-hmm. So this is very interesting, and I wonder how many coaches across the country are going to see this and go, oh, maybe we should look at something like that. Because, listen, we've discussed the offensive line at length this year, right? They had a fantastic game against Virginia Tech. Mm-hmm. They held them to 1 sack, one of the best pass rushing teams in the country. It was a great performance, and they were, I think it was their best run blocking game of the season as well.
Yeah.
We've also talked about things were not good against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh got constant pressure on Kyle McCord. The Stanford game. They gave up a season high of sacks against Holy Cross of all teams. Mm-hmm. And yet, the one thing that we've never really discussed was, I wonder if part of the problem is that they're rotating guys. That hasn't really been a thing that anyone has been concerned with as far as a lack of, or why they might be underperforming in certain situations. And I think as the season has gone along, the players have gotten a little bit more used to it, rotating in and out. And it accomplishes a couple of things. One, it keeps the starters fresh. Mm-hmm. When you get into the fourth quarter, they've got 20, 30, whatever it is, less snaps than some of the opposing defensive linemen. And they're a little bit more fresh and
you wonder. We wonder if that's what's paying out in these overtime games,
right? Yeah. I mean, that seriously could. The other part of it is, as you mentioned, from a transfer portal keeping players perspective, the players that are backups are saying, "Yeah, I'm a backup right now, but I'm young and I'm still getting out there and playing. Mm-hmm. So in a couple of years, it'll be my time, and then I'll be ready to go and play those 75, 80% of the snaps." The other thing it does is, I remember back to the preseason, and there was an interview, I think I saw it on Channel 9 as part of the Orange Nation TV show, mm-hmm. where they interviewed Josh Aloha and talked to him about his future. And it may have been something that I read too. I could be having the attribution wrong there. But either way, he made a comment that his goal was to play in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Like, you're a backup. You've never started. You've barely played during your entire career. How are you expecting to go from a backup for a not great offensive line to sticking in the NFL? But yet, he's got a bunch of snaps this year. He has legitimate game film now.
Right.
So even though, yes, it may be tough, but maybe that means he goes to one of these other professional leagues, the XFL type of leagues and those types of things, because he actually has game film now, him going against legitimate Division I caliber players, whereas under the old, quote-unquote, methodology of only playing your 5 guys, he has practice film and against backups against FCS teams.
Right.
That's not helpful. Now he has, look, this is me going against a good Virginia Tech defensive line.
Yep.
This is so it helps their potential professional futures as well. So it helps so much. I think it's all part of the program that he's building with all that dart and everything else. And I think it helps the team feel more together as well.
You know, I look at Fran, and you look at the head coach matchup this week, because it's both new coaches, both at Northeast schools. Yep. I mean, Fran and Bill O'Brien, you can't stack these guys up next to each other and have more, like, different situations. Yet, I look at Fran, like, actively seeks out Northeast job, like, understands what the deal is. Bill O'Brien is from New England. Like, this was a very specific job he took. I find it very interesting that, you know, simultaneously, totally different guys, but it seems to be guys that actively looked for these jobs and get these jobs, which I find intriguing, because maybe it means they could lead these places on different paths than we've seen them on.
High-profile coaches have not been seeking out Northeast jobs outside of Penn State, really.
Right. And Bill O'Brien,
decades.
go figure, you know, former Penn State coach.
Yeah, and he's someone who, you know, he's got a lot of name recognition. Fran Brown, from a recruiting perspective, has a lot of name recognition. And when you get coaches like that at a Boston College and at a Syracuse, you've got Pat Narduzzi at Pittsburgh, who's won an ACC title. He has a very good team this year. You know, it helps you think that it's possible that Northeast football at the Division I level can get back to being competitive nationally,
right,
more so than just, okay, you get to play in the Bad Boy Mowers Bowl, congratulations, as opposed to, you know, Pittsburgh, after beating Syracuse, was one of those teams that, maybe this is a potential playoff team. Could they win the ACC? You have that discussion. Syracuse, even though they're on the outside right now, but if you win out and you beat Miami and Miami's undefeated in the top 5, are you a team that some pundits are like, maybe Syracuse should be in the back end of this playoff? Are they a team we should talk about? You're at least maybe in that discussion.
Yeah, you at least enter the fringe of the conversation.
Right. And Boston College early in the season, when they were, 4-1 or whatever it was that they were, and their one loss was still a pretty impressive showing at the time, a top 10 Missouri team. Mm-hmm. You felt like, oh, well, they're in year 1 under Bill O'Brien. They look like they're heading in the right direction. So all positive things, I think, if you're a fan of Northeast football.
Yeah, and I guess I wonder, you always try to figure out, okay, this 12-team playoff comes in, it's the first year. Oh, that's exciting. But what are the, what are the after effects going to be? It could be things like that, of just the simple fact that more teams have to be in the conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe then more teams accidentally get in the conversation, which then leads to people being like, well, maybe I go play at that school.
SMU right now.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah.
No one thought that they'd be a playoff team coming into the season. And right now, they are the number 1 team in the ACC, I think. Them and Miami are the top 2 teams.
They're the first team right outside the playoff this week.
Right. So, and they, if the season ended right now, they'd be playing for a playoff berth because they'd be playing Miami in the ACC championship game.
Right.
If they win that game, Miami might fall back a little bit. They're still probably in the playoff with just the one loss being in the ACC championship game. Mm-hmm. Whereas SMU then would get the auto bid.
Yeah, so they'd be like the 4th seed in the tournament.
Right. I mean, who would thought that? I mean, they've been really good this year. Their one loss is against a really good BYU team by 3 points.
Who's currently leading the Big 12.
Right. So, I think it's good for the ACC. I think it's good for a lot of these programs nationally that, they wouldn't even be close to the discussion right now. Notre Dame, even though they seem to always be in the discussion, even if they're 6-5 because they're Notre Dame, mm-hmm. they're right now, their season would be over if it was the old 4-team playoff.
Done.
They'd be done. And they're right now in the discussion, and right there, if they went out, they're probably going to be in the playoff. That's what this does. It gives those other teams a chance. It gives the bigger programs a chance to lose a couple games and still have a shot.
That's where you look at how it's going to affect the ACC or the Big 12 or whatever. The SEC this week has a sorting out kind of week with Alabama, LSU, and Georgia, Ole Miss are the 2 main ones. It could do some weird stuff to the back end of the playoff. And in other years, that wouldn't affect SMU even in the tiny little slightest that Alabama is playing in Baton Rouge today. And yet this year,
Huge
SMU, they're like,
ramifications.
man, we got to watch this game. This
right.
is suddenly a huge game for us. All right, let's hit a break here on the TK Tailgate. Much more coming up over the rest of this hour until 10. Getting you ready for Cuse and Boston College. Nooner in Chestnut Hill. Step aside for a few on TK. Hang with us at Cuse Sports Talk. We're back after this.
Scrap metal?
Empire Recycling.
Are you a homeowner,
Helps
business
if I turn
owner,
the commercial
contractor,
on to
or
play.
scrap collector that needs a place to cash in your...
What's up, Kev? It also seems Fran is managing this roster with the 100% intention that he's got 105 Scullies next year.
Yes. There's no question. You can tell by how many recruits
just
they have in this class.
Godspeed at the store, Devin.
Get some Kyle McCord chips.
Yeah, get some McCord chips if they got them at the chopper. They're good chips.
They are. They are good chips. Wish there were more chips in the bag, though.
Always.
Feels like 2/3 of the bag is air.
Yeah. That's like all chips nowadays. You're like, what?
I know.
Where'd they go?
I feel like it used to be like 3/4 of the bag was full.
Yeah.
Now it feels like the opposite.
Now it's like, I can very easily grab the top of the bag without squishing anything. I don't like this. Kev bought some chips yesterday? All right, there we go.
To go with or to put on your pizza? He's putting those chips on his pizza.
I
think
that could give you an exciting crunch element.
Why not?
Toss them on a sandwich.
Everyone's done that, right? Make like
I mean, if you
peanut
haven't
butter
done that at
jelly
least
sandwich,
once, so yeah, you toss
throw
it.
some chips in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same gist as tossing like a pickle on a sandwich. I mean, it's a crunch.
Yep.
And it's supporting your quarterback.
We always have pickles in my house. My wife loves pickles.
I like I like a pickle on the sandwich. I like a good sandwich sliced pickle.
Yep. If I'm having a deli meat sandwich,
Yeah,
then I do like the pickle.
yeah.
If I'm having peanut butter and jelly, not
That
putting
would be
pickle
a
on
bold choice
Then not
to
putting the pickle.
pickle up the PB&J.
it. Yeah. No thanks.
That would be an aggressive.
We actually have pickle Christmas ornaments.
Yeah. Wow. You're all in on the pickle.
Yeah, her ancestry includes a lot of German,
Okay.
and so it's apparently
Yeah, they
Big
like
thing.
the.
yeah, it's a big thing.
How long is our last break? 1:32, 3, 4, 4.
It was crazy going to the store and trying to find stuff for my son to make a goodie bag to bring for Halloween celebration at school.
Oh, because all the
And-
rules and stuff. Peanuts
Well, but
and
not only that, I felt like the stores had more Christmas stuff than Halloween stuff.
oh yeah, it's the Christmas. I love Christmas, but like slow your roll.
I know. Insane.
It's like hold on.
Like I walk into
Like how about Thanksgiving?
like a Walmart and there's like they've got the big inflatable like zombie and right next to it is a big inflatable Snoopy with a Santa hat on.
I was in Home Depot like 3 weeks ago, so well before Halloween, and like that whole area inside where it was all Christmas stuffed already.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's October 15th.
Yes. Yeah. It's like they did Halloween for like a day and we're like, all right, that's enough Christmas.
Yeah, Kev, your wife, if she likes wings, get the pickle wings at Heritage Hill.
But see, we've got food allergies, so we have to make sure the wings are gluten free. That's the thing.
Well, that I cannot. I'm not up on their gluten level.
I'm not either.
SU football.
All right, rocking out of the TK Tailgate here. Brought to you by our friends at the TK Tavern. Brian Higgins, Mike McAllister. Saturday morning. We're about, 2.5 hours from kickoff today, right here on TK99 on your TV on the CW. If you haven't located that from last week, keep it handy for next week as well. Cuse and Cal will also be living large on the CW out in Berkeley next week. All right, so a little injury news the other day, or two kind of roster news. Is one injury, one not really. Frank kind of slipped in. Marcellus Barnes is out for the season when he was on with Stephen Pauly at Orange Station the other day. I'm like, wait, what? When did he get hurt again? I don't know if you know anything about this. I don't remember. Like he missed a few games like a month and a half ago, but that was kind of like, oh, that's not ideal.
I was not aware that there was a setback that would cause that. So that's unfortunate. Now, could it have been not that there was a significant setback like another injury, but more so he just couldn't quite get back to 100%, and sure. They just said, look, we just need to shut it down. And maybe that's what happened. Don't know for sure, but either way, I think he was their best cover corner, and it's not great not having him.
Yeah, I wonder now, like Clarence Lewis and Jaden Bellamy will clearly be the starters at corner, I would think. I do wonder now what are you going to do behind that, because you play three guys at least at that spot. Devin Grant was one of those guys before, but he's moved to one of the safety spots because Justin Barron slid down. I wonder if you revert that because Marlo Wax is back, though Barron at linebacker has been working out I think pretty well, or if you go with one of these young guys, like Greg Delane or Ibn McDaniels or whatever out there.
Delane seems to be the guy that's been out there a little bit more.
Yeah.
I don't recall seeing a ton of Ibn McDaniel. Now, I do know that they are really high on Ibn and his future.
Mm-hmm.
They think that he's a potential NFL player.
Okay.
So that was, from when he was recruited. They thought that highly of him. So it wouldn't stun me, but again, he doesn't really have that experience. I know Greg Delane hasn't been out there a ton, doesn't have a ton of experience himself, but at least he's been in the program for a couple years.
He has a little more.
Yeah, he has a little bit more. So I would guess he'd be the guy. But the benefit to having Marlo Wax back is you can do a lot of different things with your rotation, because you can move Justin Barron back to safety in certain packages and move Devin Grant up to corner. And so there's some versatility there. So I think you can do lots of different things with your lineup if you aren't, for whatever reason, let's say that there's more confidence in Devin Grant as your third corner than there is in a Greg Delane or an Ibn McDaniels or someone else, then, perhaps in certain situations like third and long or third and mediums, that's the way you go.
Yeah, I mean, the Grant thing, the Barron thing, it seems to have created positional flexibility without having to change who's on the field.
Right.
You can move guys in different spots.
Yeah, and then the benefit to that is you can kind of have them all in the box, and you don't really know which one's the safety, which one's the slot corner, which one's the linebacker. You kind of have them all up there. That I think can help you a lot too.
I think we got to talk a little Marlo Wax here. He was great last week, and he looked. There's no better way to explain it. He looked like Marlo Wax. He's in the backfield, sack. He's forcing a fumble. He's recovering a fumble. He's making game-changing plays. Which, man, now that you see it back, you're like, oh yes, they have been missing this all year long.
They certainly have. He had one of the most impressive things before he got hurt in that he basically only played a half and a little bit, and still won ACC Linebacker of the Week.
Right.
And again, that was not against an FCS team. That was against a MAC team that had won 10 games the last 2 years, is 6-3, I believe, so far this year, and right up towards the top of the standings in the MAC. So they're having another good year. And then he comes back, and against Pittsburgh, I thought he looked okay, but this week sort of felt like finally got his legs under him, back to 100%.
Looked moving right.
Yeah, and he just makes plays. He's not only is he smart and he's in the right position a lot of times, not only does it allow you to put Fidel Diggs back as your pass rusher and have him be the spy on mobile quarterbacks, not only is he one of the best blitzers you have on the team, but he just has this knack for being in the right spot when there is a fumble to recover it.
Like the ball gets on the ground when he's nearby.
Right. And then forcing those fumbles like he did in overtime to seal the win. So he makes these plays, and those are the highlight level plays, but some of the other things that he does is, someone will run for 6-7 yards and he's kind of right there to stop it from being 20 or 30 yards. Those are some of the little things that he does as well.
And we saw a stretch there where we were seeing the 20 and 30 yard plays. So that'll be a key. I'd imagine today was especially with a guy like Castellanos who can have those explosion plays at points of the game. You know, another guy not on the field, but we actually saw for the first time last week in a long time is Zede Haynes, who, good news, I guess, that he is back with the program, whatever's been going on with Zede here for the last couple months. I have no idea if he's going to play again this year, but that's got to be at least a good sign that he is back in town.
Yeah, it sounded like from what Fran said, I think on Monday, that they're, kind of going to let him practice for a week or two and then kind of see where things go from there. Now, he also said before the Pittsburgh game, Marlowe's probably another week or so out. And that he kind of wasn't expecting him back till the Virginia Tech game. And then lo and behold, Marlowe Wax-Trott's out there with the starters against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, same with Trevor Pena, who I was certain was not playing that game.
So would it stun me if all of a sudden Zede Haynes is out there at some point against Boston College, whether as a starter or in certain packages? It wouldn't. The benefit to having him is not necessarily about, if he's out there, he's going to catch a couple touchdowns. It's his speed and the threat of speed, and it forces the defenses to cover you differently because they have that. And even if he's not in complete football shape, even if he's not fully what Zede Haynes can be because of, some of those conditioning things, being away from the team for so long, the threat of his speed, he's one of the fastest guys in the conference, completely changes how Boston College defends you. But then also, if you have a little bit of a slip in coverage, he can still get by you and run down the field. Like, his speed hasn't gone away.
Right.
So he could potentially make a big play even if he's only out there for 10 snaps or so.
I mean, that's where you look at the rest of the receiving core, and they've all had certainly their moments and excellent seasons. I mean, Payne is fast, but he's not fast in the way of a deep threat.
They don't have a guy like that.
Jackson Meeks is not that. I mean, you look at Justice Ross Simmons, scored the long touchdown last week, but you can tell, he may be fast, but not coming back from injury fast right now. And Aronde Gadsden's not that. Like, they haven't had that on the roster in 2 months now, which keeps McCord's options kind of in a phone booth and rely. I mean, he's dealt with it very well, but just the idea of the threat is a lot more than nothing.
Yeah, I think that was, when you look at the defensive game plan that Pittsburgh had against Syracuse, it was basically be really physical with the Syracuse wide receivers at the line of scrimmage and not really worried about them going over the top. So try to make the short and medium passes as difficult and the windows as tight and with as many hands around the ball as possible. And it worked. They had 3 pick sixes and 5 picks total. Virginia Tech tried to implement that same strategy, and it worked for 2.5 quarters. And then Syracuse started to get into rhythm. But part of the reason that they got into rhythm was because the ground game really took off.
Right.
And so if you don't have that deep threat and you're not going to be able to basically sit back and throw the ball 50 times and have wide open spaces in the middle of the field because teams are respecting what you can do down the field, the way to combat not having that deep threat is to run the ball because that focuses the secondary in looking at your backfield and trying to focus on coming up to help play run support. And that will allow those slants and those quick outs and those types of things to work a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, that's the two ways, right? Like, if you can remove a safety off the top, you got more room to operate with. If you can force them where your running back's going, you got more room to operate with in a different kind of way. So we'll have to see on Zede Haynes. It's been a bit of a mystery here for the last couple of months, but good to see he's back. A lot of times people, leave to go deal with whatever, and you never hear from them again.
He's tremendously talented.
Yeah.
Like, he was a top 100, top 50, something like that overall recruit in the country in his recruiting class. Went to Georgia for a reason. Everyone wanted him. He is a big time talent, and I know haven't seen a ton of that. Even the couple of games he played early in the season didn't have monster games, but he's someone who I think, assuming he sticks around and he could end up being one of the best wide receivers in the ACC by the time he's done.
Yeah, regardless, has 3 more years of eligibility after this year to deal with for sure. All right, let's get our final break out of the way here on the TK Tailgate. We'll get into this. Cuse-BC, what's got to happen for the Orange to win the game today? We'll detail that when we come back after this here on Q Sports Talk and TK 99.
People really drink the pickle juice after they finish a pickle jar?
Who was it?
Is that really a thing?
It's your old Eagle. Who did that? It was who's the running back before Westbrook?
Deuce Staley?
Deuce Staley. Wasn't that a thing? I think that was a thing. Like a hydration thing.
I get it from that perspective.
Yeah.
But doing it because, I love pickles so much. I just want to drink the juice.
Now, do I sometimes use in the summer, use leftover pickle juice and toss cucumber slices in there to repickle new cucumbers? Yes.
Oh, I can.
But that's
I understand reusing it. I don't understand. My pickles are gone.
Yeah. Do I do what Bowling Ball says and use it if you're making a sauce? A little pickle juice in a sauce like that, or if you're making a tartar sauce or something? Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah.
That would make some sense.
But yeah, just straight chugging it.
Pickle juice is good for you after you.
Yeah, I mean, pickle juice and Gatorade, I think, bear a striking similarity in some ways.
Yeah. The electrolytes.
Yeah, it's the reuse it for cauliflower. I suppose I could pickle cauliflower, Kev.
Why?
It doesn't sound like a thing that I'm going to do. You're right. It would pickle it, but then I'd have cauliflower.
But then you'd have pickled cauliflower.
Yeah, and then
I didn't know that was a thing.
And then now what am I doing? Now I got a jar.
Pig's feet is a thing.
Yeah, now I got a jar of pickled cauliflower that's just sitting there.
Pickle juice is what plants crave?
Oh, yeah? Like a fertilizer?
Should I, after I finish a jar of pickles, should I go pour it in my garden?
And it'll create more pickles?
Right?
Yeah.
We'll get Jurassic Park level foliage in my backyard.
I can try that out.
Hopefully without the velociraptors.
But if that's what happens,
my son's friend drank to prevent cramping before a football game.
Yeah,
I can see that.
It does that.
Yeah. That makes total sense. I could totally, if someone deals with cramps a lot or they, have hamstrings tightening up or whatever the case is, they're like, you know what, this might make it so that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I understand. I'm going to chug some pickle juice before a game and that'll help. Okay, I get it.
A shot and a pickleback is a thing.
Yeah.
People do that.
I was more so confused by the, you're at home, you take the pickle jar out of the refrigerator, you take the last pickle out of there to put it on a sandwich or someone wants to eat it with their meal or whatever else, and so you've got a jar with no pickles and just a 3/4 filled with pickle juice, and you're like, all right, got it, time to chug.
Yeah.
That's more so what I was confused by.
Yeah.
Because I just take it, dump it down the drain, and
dump it in the sink and put the jar in the recycle bin.
That's right.
I did that literally 2 days ago.
If you're environmentally friendly, of course.
I was friendly 2 days ago. I think it made it to the bin.
Good for you.
I think it
Good
did.
for you.
The garbage can is so much closer.
You put pizza boxes in the recycle bin?
I put a pizza box in the recycle bin just last night, Mike.
Okay.
I'm very environmentally friendly.
I did. I was not aware that pizza boxes were supposed to go into the recycle bin until years ago. Mm. And
now, what they do with it once they put it in there, I don't know.
I have no idea.
Yeah. We just on blind faith.
I put it in there now,
with it.
But I didn't used to, and then my wife made a comment about, no, you're supposed to put those in the recycle bin. Like, really? But there's
it's cardboard
cheese remnants on it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I don't know what really happens. Do they look at it like it's dirty and then just throw it out?
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know what happens.
Do we have a recycle plant expert in the chat?
Who works in the recycling business?
I just want to know if I'm wasting my time throwing that.
Yeah. I've got all those blue bins.
Well, I don't have blue bins anymore. So in our neighborhood, it's picked up by Syracuse haulers. Uh-huh. They do our trash and our recycles, and they give us the big.
Oh, you got
trash
the big
cans.
other bin? Yeah.
It's black for trash and green for recycling.
Okay, yeah, I've seen those. All right, last few minutes with you here on the TK Tailgate. Oh, you got a few more minutes, though, before kickoff. It's not 10 o'clock yet. Kickoff's past noon. Coming up next year on TK, of course, the beginning of the Syracuse Sports Network pregame broadcast from Boston with Tim and the whole crew out there, Adam and Matt. I'll be down the hall here in a few minutes on ESPN Radio next 2 hours, getting you ready, and also on Cuse Sports Talk. But we got Mike McAllister here for another few. Now, what do you think decides this game today, Mike? I mean, I look at it. It's Cuse-BC. Hopefully it's decided differently than last year's game, because that was one of the grossest things I've ever seen. We don't need to revisit the Carlos Del Rio Wilson 4-interception experiment that spawned the Wildcat offense last year. But, man, 2 new coaches, 2 quarterbacks exciting in their own way. Like, this game has some kind of potential to it.
It does, but, kind of looking at it high level, it feels to me like Syracuse is the better team.
Yeah.
I kind of feel the same way I did going into the NC State game, in that it feels like if both teams play their best game, that Syracuse should win. Now, there are ways where if you're playing well in a lot of ways, you can still lose a game against a team that's maybe not as good as you. Turnovers are one of them. Massive special teams gaffes are another. We've seen Syracuse do both of those things.
Yes, special team. It is their specialty. Massive special teams gaffes.
Yes, it is. So, from a Syracuse perspective, you want to take care of the football. An underrated aspect of this game is penalties. Syracuse is one of the most penalized teams in the country, and Boston College is one of the least penalized teams in the country. So that's another thing to look at going into this game. Boston College is not great on third down on either side of the ball. Syracuse is very good on defense on third down on both sides of the ball.
Right.
So that's another thing to watch. But Boston College's defense, while they've given up yards and points most of the season, they've lived off of turnovers. They're one of the better teams in the country at forcing turnovers. And so Syracuse, I think, has to take care of the football today in order to win. But I feel similar as I did going into the NC State game, that Syracuse is the better team. If they play well, that this should be a game that they kind of control and are able to win. Maybe similarly, that you're kind of up by multiple scores most of the game and it ends up as like a 7 to 10 point victory.
It's one where, man, like if you're going to have a season, right? Like if you're like, here you are sitting on 6. Like if you're going to get to that 8-9, this is a game you win.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because here's the other thing. You lose this game, then it puts a little bit more pressure on that Cal game, whereas it feels like if you win this game, you've now won 2 in a row. You've bounced back from that ugly game against Pittsburgh. You're at 7-2, and it feels like you have a lot of momentum going into that Cal game, and that, you know, everything can continue to build and snowball and all of those cliches. So I think this is a massive game, just like I thought last week was a massive game, because it can turn your season one way or another. This isn't going to necessarily turn it to the bad if you lose this game, but it will certainly raise some questions, because I think Syracuse is the better football team.
Like last week, kind of the Pitt game took away some possibilities. Virginia Tech didn't bring them all back, but added a lot of them back in, and this can keep things on track here this week with Boston College. And man, I mean, as much as I don't like to look back at the BC game last year, because, man, it was gross. What was it, 17-7 and the interceptions, and it was just a mess of a football game.
Yeah.
Well, look at how much both these teams have changed since that game. It's like you could watch that game and be like, oh, these same teams are playing a year later. And like, yeah, this game has nothing at all to do with that game.
No, I mean, at least Boston College's quarterback is the same.
Yeah.
They've got some other, skill position and other players defensively that are still the same. Syracuse has had a lot more turnover from that perspective, but brand new coaching staffs, brand new schemes, all of that. But similar to last year's game, that was really a game where Syracuse had to throw up all over themselves in order to lose it. And they did. And they did.
Yeah.
Yes, they absolutely did.
Repeatedly.
Now, I don't think they would have to that same degree. Like if you throw 4 interceptions and you can't move the ball at all on offense, I don't think that's a game that Syracuse would still be in it late against this Boston College team. I think this Boston College team is better than what last year's was. But it's still a game that you should feel like you're the better team. You should be able to control. Syracuse has controlled time of possession really, really well all season. So the more you can do that, I think the biggest key is preventing Castellanos from killing you with his legs, meaning a 3rd and 6 and he scrambles for 8. Meaning 1st and 10, you have him sacked for a 5-yard loss. He breaks out and runs for 2 yards. So it's 2nd and 8 instead of 2nd and 15.
Yep.
All of those little things will matter so much in this game. If you can get Boston College behind the chains so that they can't just run the ball 4 or 5 yards, whatever it is, every play, which we know has been an issue for Syracuse, stopping the run, that puts them in a tough situation because they're not an offense that is built on 3rd and long type situations.
What do you think is going through Doug Marone's head right at this second? He's like the special assistant of Bill O'Brien.
That's the other part of this is, you wonder. I don't think that being a special assistant is going to have some sort of emotional reaction from the players, right? Like if he was an offensive line coach or an offensive coordinator, I could see being some sort of rallying like, hey, let's win this game for coach against his alma mater, the team that he used to coach for as well. Whereas the special assistant type situation, I don't think that causes the same type of emotional reaction. So I don't know that's going to be that much of a factor here. but it certainly is a little bit of an interesting storyline.
Yeah, it's. I mean, he and O'Brien are besties going back for years and years and years and years. So go figure. There's 3 former NFL head coaches on the staff. Rob Chudzinski is part of the staff as well. You don't usually kind of get that collection there. All right, we got about a minute left here, Mike. Final score. What are you feeling today?
I've got Syracuse 31, Boston College 23.
Okay, you got a little bigger spread than I'm going. I'm going 30-27.
Okay.
So we're kind of in the same general region. It just feels like Syracuse plays one-score games. That seems to be their vibe.
They do, and they've been really good in those games, and that was good last week because Virginia Tech had been awful in those one-score type of situations, and it felt like once that game got close, that sort of crept into their mind a little bit. But it's a game where I think it's important for Syracuse to get out to a lead early and sort of try to keep Boston College at arm's length so that they're constantly trying to play catch up. If it's the other way around, I think that's a little bit more problematic when you're on the road.
All right, let's get to wrap things up for our TK tailgate here today. Coming up in just about 5 minutes after this break, the Syracuse Sports Network broadcast begins right here on TK. Hang with us on Cuse Sports Talk. Do nothing. The program will continue. I'm going to walk down the hallway. I'll magically appear for you from the ESPN radio studio coming up in a few seconds. But there we are. TK tailgate in the books today. Enjoy the game, everybody.
All right.
Okay. Andrew?
Enjoy.
Hopefully we have a good game. Hopefully. I visualize that we could win every game except for Miami right now.
Is this thing on? Look at that chat. Now I'm in a different room. It's magic. It's magic. Jordan's 100% right. That was hilarious. Georgia Tech fans piling back on. T-Mac won another overtime one? Man, what a start. Yeah. Win one for the special assistant to the head coach in charge of something. Thanks for the sub. Cuse is in the house. Good job being in the house. Oh, high wind advisory. Since when is it supposed to be windy there today? Yeah, this is my dream victory. Red flag warning. Well, small craft advisory. Could be a windy game. That's not ideal.
It's the RomanoCars.com pregame show presented by Point Guard Advisors and Charles Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electrical.
Oh, welcome in. 2 hours out. Cuse and Boston College. Brian Higgins with you on this Saturday morning. Oh, if you're just joining us on ESPN, the Cuse Sports Talk viewers have been with us for an hour already. We've been grinding down in the TK Tailgate. We're down the hall. We're ready to go. We got another 2 hours till kickoff today for Cuse and Boston College on it. Apparently, this came out of the blue. I looked at the forecast the other day. This was not there. And apparently a windy day in Chestnut Hill. We'll see how that affects the Kyle McCord passing game today. As we know, if there's one thing that quarterbacks dislike most of all, it is a windy day. How does a small craft advisory in the area affect the passing game? Questions abound. I know it affects the tailgating game. You got to watch out for your tents. You got to watch out for your tents. But looking forward to it today. Houston, Boston College. Besides the wind, looks like a gorgeous day in Chestnut Hill. Nary a hint of precipitation in the area. And, it looks to be warm and sunny, or at least as warm and sunny as it gets here on November the 9th as we get ready for yet another edition, the 58th edition of Syracuse and BC. 100 years since they played Game 1. So these old rivals meet yet again. Not quite as old, not quite as many games as Syracuse and Pittsburgh, but checking in at number 2 in a lot of those categories in all-time Syracuse history is the Syracuse and Boston College football game. One that, man, like for a lot of years, this game just kind of went by. Like had a lot of interesting history and then just kind of went by. But, man, it's had its moments. It's had its moments, good and bad recently. Like last year's game, the moments were, is this actually happening right now? This game, it was a Friday night in the Dome. It had been one of the assumed victories. BC was not having a good year last year. Syracuse was having a weird year, right, where then everyone got hurt and October was a mess, but the BC game was going to get things back on track and bowl eligibility and Dino Babers and then all of that. And then we started mysteriously finding out before the game that, oh, wait, can Syracuse's starting quarterback literally not like lift his arm up? Where's Garrett Schrader? What's going on here? And then it is the year anniversary of Guy at a Bar telling me that that Carlos Del Rio Wilson would be starting the game. That went poorly. 4 interceptions, injury, and Syracuse lost to BC last year 17-7. 2 years ago in Chestnut Hill, things got just weirdly spicy. Like this matchup here the last few years has had like a lot of personal foul penalties. I go back to the Dungy days where Eric almost got thrown out of the game on the second play for essentially getting in a fight with BC on the sideline and then somehow was allowed to stay in, then dominated. 2 years ago in Chestnut Hill, the Orange win the game, and then their players are trying to plant a flag in the field after. Which, all right, say what you will about the taunting. I have less problem with the taunting than the general idea of putting a flag in artificial turf. Because you can't, it doesn't work like that. So we'll see what happens today. There's been some zany stuff. Obviously, lots has changed since those two games. Both teams have new head coaches. Fran Brown, Bill O'Brien, who, now that we look at it, we're still midway through year 1 for both. But both, at least now, seem like really good hires for their respective schools. Would these guys have been good hires at other schools? I don't know at this point in time. But, place and time feels like it has come and met both O'Brien at BC and Fran here at Syracuse in a way that it just makes a lot of sense for both schools involved here today. You got a Northeast guy at both schools. You got a New England guy coaching BC, coming back home. It's his wife's alma mater. Lots of family and friends in the area. It's a job he wanted. It's a job he desired. And it's a job now, I don't want to say on the back end of his career, but after he's done Penn State and after he's done the NFL with the Houston Texans, it's a job that seems like it makes a lot of sense for the current state of Bill O'Brien's coaching career with his special assistant Doug Marrone and an underrated little storyline of the game today that who knows if it'll feature in the game at all, but is just this intriguing little nugget that Doug Marrone is involved in this one on the other team in one way or another. Not sure if it'll be literally anywhere we can actually see him based on rules or not today, but he will be involved in some way or another. Then obviously we've told the story of Fran at Syracuse a million times, and certainly that marriage so far has worked out as well as you would have liked here. So intriguing things here as we enter Syracuse and Boston College on this early November Saturday afternoon. Soon to be Saturday afternoon. Still Saturday morning, about 2 hours away from kickoff right now, which means obviously we'd love for you to listen on TK99, but you've got 2 hours left to figure out the CW for you if you didn't figure it out last week. And then you can keep it figured out for next week because the Orange will be playing 3 in a row as suddenly the official ACC team of the CW here in early November. All right, last week was a game on the CW. Last week was a game against Virginia Tech, an old Big East foe. Last week was a game in which it was November, and November has not been kind to Syracuse recently. We'll detail some of those numbers later in the program. And last week was a game that was kind of after the Pitt game, which was a lot of uh-ohs. Last week was kind of a few small it was like, uh-oh. November, is this happening again? 7-0, 14-3, 21-3 early in the third quarter. And I defy you. I defy you to not have had the thought, here we go again. I defy you to not have had that thought last week. I don't believe it. Tell me you didn't. I don't believe it. It was a here we go again. It is November. What is Syracuse football doing kind of moment? And then it was about an hour and a half of real time of maybe we're not doing this again. Hey, what's LaQuinn Allen doing over here? All right, now Kyle McCord's got a little something going. Oh, Justice Ross Simmons is here and available. Okay, and then you come back, go down, tie the game, and you win it in overtime. Second overtime win of the year. Second LaQuinn Allen overtime touchdown of the year, and it really feels like to me the last, fourth quarter, so 15 minutes, add maybe half of the third quarter, last 20, 25 minutes of the game last Saturday in game time, plus the overtime. We'll see what this week and the rest of the season brings. It felt like a significant hinge point for Syracuse football that we know it's a new coaching staff, and Fran Brown has been very specific that he wasn't here in previous Novembers. And we know the roster is very new, but as new as it is, half-ish the guys went through this all last year. But now they've been through it without it happening, when it felt like it was going to, and then it didn't. It feels like that can be a weight lifted off. For one, the fan base last week, but that doesn't affect how they play today. I mean, I suppose it can, how you react in the stands and all that, but you know. But certainly of like guys that were here last year, clearly it didn't affect LaQuinn Allen in that way, but of all the guys that were here last year, lift that off your shoulders. Justin Barron, Marlo Wax, the guys that have been here for a long time. It's not here we go again. It's here's a new path, and this is allowed. And what a game last week by LaQuinn. What a game. First 100-yard rushing game of the season after he had many of them last year. And there have been many reasons for that. Not excuses, but reasons for that in the first couple months this year. Just the way the offense was running and the proclivity of throwing the football and the amount he was involved as a pass catcher instead of a runner. Well, last week he got the ball more than 20 times, and he made Virginia Tech pay, and he made them pay down the stretch. He wore them down as the game went along. And we saw that on the game-tying drive for sure. We saw that on the touchdown that tied the game, and then we saw it on the plays of overtime because LeQuint was the only guy that touched it in overtime into the end zone. And he is a guy just through sheer force of will seems to be a get stronger as the game goes along kind of guy, and we saw it last week. Now we can see how that applies to a get stronger as the season goes along kind of guy and what he can do to Boston College today. And I thought his, mirror counterpoint on defense last week was Marlowe X. Marlowe hurt third quarter of the opener. Marlowe out almost 2 months. Marlowe returned for the Pitt game now more than 2 weeks ago. Marlowe looked okay, but a little stiff. Last week, Marlowe X looked like Marlowe X. And for any of you that have watched Marlowe X play his career here at Syracuse, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He looked like Marlowe X because Marlowe X, when right, is a guy that shows up in the right spot. Marlowe X last week showed up in the backfield for a second and a half. Marlowe X last week in the third quarter when the game needed to be turned, showed up and recovered a fumble. And Marlowe X last week with his team up a touchdown in overtime, showed up and forced the fumble that was then recovered by Fadil Diggs that ended the game. Because if that ball doesn't get punched out, Virginia Tech, they're getting awfully close to the end zone. They could have scored. I was not ruling out that Virginia Tech would have gone for two and potentially would have won the game at that point. Like Marlowe X, game-winning plays last week. LeQuint Allen, game-winning plays last week. Veterans that have been through Novembers that have gone sideways before, now under Fran Brown into November with game-winning plays to potentially lead a new path going forward this year for Syracuse football. Fascinating to watch last week, and we'll see if it continues on today with Syracuse and Boston College. All right, lots coming up here over the course of the next couple hours. Closer to kickoff, we'll hear from Fran Brown. Closer to kickoff, we'll hear from QB1 Kyle McCord. Later on in this hour of the program, we'll be hearing from Scott Mutrin, one of the analysts on the Boston College radio broadcast. Immediately next, my conversation earlier this week with Syracuse quarterback Don McPherson. Donnie next year as we roll along here on this Saturday morning, getting you ready for a noon kick. Houston-Boston College from a windy Chestnut Hill. We're back after this here on Cuse Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.
Let's go.
It's quite possible, Satchel Sack. You were right on that. I have alternate plans at 12 p.m. Gavetta. But good for Devo. Q's team total is 24.5 CBW? Yeah. That feels overy, though. The wind. What's up with this wind? Where does this wind come from? Shout outs to YouTube as well. You have Spectrum. If you have Spectrum, I'd imagine you should have CW as part of that, T-Takes. Like, I know the CW is on my YouTube TV streaming. So I would imagine that channel option is available for you. If you have the Spectrum TV app, I would guess. Wherever you can find the CW is where it will be streaming. But unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be any good way to stream the CW like on, like the ESPN games. On a separate app. But if you can stream your cable in some way, you should be able to get it. The CW does have their own app. People were saying last week that tried it. It really didn't work. I did not personally test it out. Maybe. You could do that, Tom. Yeah, Spectrum can be funny of where it lets you use their streaming stuff. That is true. Or it's over the air. You just grab it. CW is right there. You just grab it. Grab it. Grab it. That'll work, bowling ball. Yeah, the rules are weird when it comes to broadcast networks and stuff like that, Kev. There's so many different things.
This is the RomanoCars.com pregame show presented by Point Guard Advisors and Charles Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electrical.
All righty, rocking and rolling here on this Saturday morning, less than 2 hours away from the opening kickoff now. Oh, yeah, we're gaining on you, kickoff. And apparently a windy morning. Reports coming in from Chestnut Hill. You go to, you type in, I checked during the week. None of this was there during the week. I was on weather alert, and it looked nice. It still looks nice, but winds potentially 16, 15, 16, 17 miles an hour, potentially spiking into the 20s. There's a small craft advisory in the area, so no boating on the football field in Boston College today. No boating on the football field. It's against the rules. Stay out of the Charles River. And the ocean, which is not that far from there. You get the point. Anyway, welcome back here to our RomanoCars.com pregame show here at ESPN Radio and Cue Sports Talk. CueSportsTalk.com. Cue Sports Talk streaming live now on YouTube. As always this week, chatted with my guy, Don McPherson, brought to you by our friends at Fellman Brothers. Always plenty of things to talk about with our guy, Don. But the main thing we talked about is, we've watched a lot of Syracuse football here over the last a decade or so, and we're seeing a team this year, at least Donnie thinks, that's showing a certain something here coming down the stretch.
This team has shown some grit, at different times. Obviously, the UNLV game, and then once again with this team, I just thought that it was so important to get LaQuint Allen. I think we talked about this last week, to get him in the run game, how important he was going to be to be able to possess the ball, control the clock, and get into conference play where things started to get a little bit tighter. And I thought that was the biggest part of that game, was getting LaQuint Allen some touches and getting him moving. I thought it was wasn't a great game for Kyle McCord. It wasn't his typical kind of game. And so we saw that LaQuint Allen could get it done. And the offensive line thing did a great job of providing some opportunities for him.
Yeah, LaQuint was fantastic. And, man, it felt like we've heard the stories, like Fran was not really pleased with how things were going late first half, with good reason. And there was kind of the various come-to-Jesus moments at halftime. And it feels like nobody better on this year's team right to answer that call than LaQuint, because he'll do it and everyone seems to follow him.
Yeah, and I think, coming into the season, we knew he would be that guy, and then all of a sudden Kyle McCord just started lighting up. And you have to give, LeQuint that some respect for being patient and being steadfast. He was getting challenged. There was other guys getting some touches early on in the season, but he's just been consistent. And I think, that UNLV game and what he did, especially in that overtime touchdown, just not quitting, I think just epitomizes the kind of player he's been. And Fran Brown, as much as he was talking about Kyle McCord at the beginning of the season, he definitely has to give LeQuint Allen some credit for not just his productivity, but his patience and making things happen when he got opportunities.
Yeah, LeQuint, 2 overtime games this year. He has 2 overtime touchdowns and 2 game-winning touchdowns. That's you're not going to get a better ratio than that. That's pretty good. And then, go ahead, Danny.
No, I was saying that's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, you'll take 2 for 2 and 2 wins in those situations. All right, on the other side of the ball, I thought this week especially, second week back, man, I know he's not 100%. But Marlowe Wax looked an awful lot like Marlowe Wax this week, and that felt like a massive, massive key to the defense being able to make some big plays down the stretch.
I could not agree with you more. I think that there's 2 things about that. You're right. He's not 100%. But man, is he a ball player? He's around the football. He's got a good nose for where the plays are going. And I think he just elevates everyone. I think just, again, like Quinn Allen, when you have there's sort of the transfer portal and you got a lot of new players, to have those foundational guys, the guys that have been here and can say, this is what this game is going to be like and this is what we should expect. You get that guy back on the field and it just elevates everybody's game. And he's just such an important, again, just like Quinn Allen, again, showing patience, right? He's injured. He's got to sit down for a couple of weeks and he comes back and he's playing at a very high level. And that's just going to inspire everybody in that defensive huddle.
I mean, this may be a false assumption, but on the assumption his health improves here as he continues to work his way back in, and who knows with what he's going through over the last month. I mean, you look at that, them figuring out, it feels like, right, the defense has room to make some intriguing growth here in the next few weeks to close the season.
And they're going to need it. They're going to need it because the schedule is getting tough, and they got Miami down the road, and UConn should be a pretty good one. But like we've talked about this, I think Cal is the best worst team on the schedule and probably in the conference. And Boston College is going to be tough. I mean, the defense is going to need, and Marlowe is going to be really important when you got a mobile quarterback like Castellanos, and so he's going to be really important this week against BC.
Don McPherson with us, and Don, this thought it didn't occur to me last game, but it once again occurred to me last game, and it's occurred to me multiple times this year. We went a really long time around here with, by mid first quarter, you could answer with like 95% certainty if Syracuse was going to win the game or not. This year it's like, and like that was good or bad. You're like, man, they look great today. Like, I'm not worried at all. This year it's like, I don't know what's going on. They might come back. I don't know. Like, it's been a fascinating watch. I think it's a commentary in many ways of like the attitude Fran Brown is instilled. But like, it's wild this year, right? Like you can't blink in a Syracuse football game now.
You are exactly right, and I think if you go back even 10 years, I would say Syracuse football was great for 3 quarters, and it was like the 4th quarter, everything decided, well, the game's over. Like, no matter what the score was, it was 3 quarters. They were lights out. They could play with anyone for 3 quarters, and then something would happen. And to your point, this team, and maybe that is the Fran Brown's dart, right? Maybe it's the relentless piece in the dart that this team. Last week you're right. When they went, did they go down 14-0 at the beginning of the game? I can't remember what the score was early.
It's 14-3 at the half. It's 21-3 early in the 3rd quarter.
There you go. At 21-3 in previous years, right? Go get a Coke, as Coach Mack would say. Go get an apple and a Coke because it's over. But this team, you just got to watch them for 60 minutes plus now. It's been a breath of fresh air to see a team like they are scrap for 60 minutes plus. Really fun to watch. Don't get up. Don't go take a piss, as Coach Mack would say. Don't go take a piss and get an apple and Coke because it's not over yet.
Yeah, you'll come back and you'll be like, somebody needs to fill me in on what happened here because you don't know what you've missed if you walked away for 5 minutes.
That's right.
Yeah, like
right.
you walk away for 5 minutes, especially in like the fourth quarter of one of these games. It's like, what? Wait a minute, what has gone on while I've been out of the room? All right, Johnny, I want to ask you about this because I know you pay attention to the whole world of college football. First, playoff rankings came out on Tuesday night. Miami, certainly highly regarded right now. They were 4th overall, end up with the 3 seed. That is it, at least in the initial rankings for the ACC. SMU was 13th. How do you take in the rankings? So I guess A, overall, and B, from an ACC perspective.
I think the ACC is looking good. I think obviously Miami is right now a team that everyone thinks will have a chance, even if we went to a 14 playoff, would have a chance to get in there because they're playing that with it. Well, I'm a little skeptical about this early, and I say it's early even though it's November. I want to see conference play out. I want to see what SMU looks like going down the wire. But I think it's pretty predictable. It's nice to see some new schools getting into Indiana and getting in the rankings and getting a shot. And but overall, I think we're looking at the same old players.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia's there, Alabama's there, Texas is there, Ohio State is there, Oregon's there. No surprise there. Indiana, though, man, what a story this Indiana team is. Like, I get their schedule hasn't been like ridiculously challenging of yet, and it's about to pick up here in the next few weeks. I think they play Ohio State maybe 2 weeks from now. I don't think it's this weekend, but man. They're just crushing. Like, they're not just winning; they are beating the crap out of everybody they play.
And I'm sure who did they play last week? And they were down for a minute.
I think was it Michigan State? It was their first time. They were down 10-0. First time they trailed all season. They're like, all right, here's 47 in a row.
Exactly, and apparently the fans were chanting overrated, and then they dropped 40 on them. This is a really good defense. Indiana, and they're playing at a level. You have to go back to Lee Corso's days when Indiana was this good.
Yeah, they've got go figure. They're playing Michigan this week, and Indiana's the team that's ranked 8th, and Michigan is the team that's unranked. Then they've got a bye week, and then they're at Ohio State. So that'll be a whale of a game coming up in a few weeks. Go figure. That's a game that's going to matter when it comes to college football playoffs. And I guess, man, that's what's fun about this expanded playoffs, right? Like, here's a random November game that would have been just completely shrugged off for the entirety of history, and this year it's going to be maybe the biggest game in college football that week.
And I do love the expansion of it because it makes these, to your point, this would have been a big game with the 14 playoff because it would have been probably one of the two was going to get in.
Right.
But now with the 12, it just makes it that much more intriguing to see schools like SMU. Where the heck did SMU come from, right? And where the heck did Indiana come from? And so it makes it more exciting to think that more teams have a shot to get in. And to your point, we might see more than Clemson get in representing the ACC. So it's much more exciting thinking that one loss doesn't kill you.
I know where SMU came from. They're sitting on all that oil. Well, where Indiana came from, it's a lot. Save for Kirk Cignetti, it's a lot harder to explain what they're doing this year, but it's looking great. All right, Don McPherson. Yeah, go ahead, Don.
On the SMU thing, you also have to remember they wanted to be a part of the party so much. They came into the ACC agreeing not to take any money.
No money.
Right? No money.
None.
They just said, we want to be a part of the party that bad. Now, of course, they have all that oil money, and they're still paying Craig James and Eric Dickerson. I think they're still getting some residuals, but they came into the ACC with no money because they wanted to be a part of the party that bad. And
that for those that understand, that's how much oil money they have access to.
That's how much oil money.
That is how much Texas oil money they have access to. They're like, your TV money? Is that what you're all arguing about? TV money? Yeah, great. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. It's like we have billionaires. Plural. We'll figure out the checkbook. All right, Donnie, what do you make of this game here this weekend? BC, hot start, kind of struggled here the last month or so with 3 straight losses. We know what the Orange are doing at 6-2. What's your sense of how it plays out on Saturday?
Going into the season, I thought BC was going to be tough, and when they beat Florida State, we thought that was a big win, and then we realized Florida State has nothing. And so you look at their schedule, and they really, it's not that impressive, and they're coming off of 3 straight losses. They need this game sitting at 4-4. They need this game bad if they're going to have a shot, because they've got SMU that we've been talking about, and Pitt left on the schedule.
Tough.
So they've got a tough road, and this has got to be a big game at home against a known rival where their fans can get fired up, because we've got a lot of Syracuse alum there in Boston, and their fans know us well. And so this is a big game for BC, and you got to figure they're going to have their ears pinned back coming off 3 straight losses, knowing that they have SMU and Pitt. So they're going to be keyed up for this football game.
There's our guy, Don McPherson. We visit with him every Thursday, brought to you by our friends at Fellman Brothers. Always great to chat with our guy, Donnie, during the week, and bring back some of that for you right now. All right. Don's had some moments with Boston College back in the day. Like, if you're a Syracuse quarterback, you've played the Eagles a lot. You play them every year. We'll see what Kyle McCord's first crack at him, last crack at him, all the cracks at him. Looks like coming up in about an hour and a half, and how he's going to deal with a little a windier day than expected in Chestnut Hill. That's kind of the weather news of the morning. It is more than a bit breezy. Otherwise, perfect. Clear, sunny, all that stuff, early November, but a little wind in the area. We'll see if that affects the Syracuse passing game at all here today. With that, we'll take a break. We'll get a view of the Boston College side of the road when we come back and chat with one of their analysts and one of their former quarterbacks. He is Scott Mutrin. He joins us next here on Q Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.
Today,
What's up, fish tender? Oh, fish tender, I sense he's about to get buckled. Congrats on your successes, bowling ball. That is a good way to do it, fish tender. And it'll get you next week, too. Fish tender's going to work on a future buckling. Dom is avoiding chapped lips. Or are they trying to bang you to get in, Hudson Cuse? You're on the golf course. Well, you'll be involved in a light buckling there. I feel certain of it. You're biding your time, San Diego Cuse? Oh, man, you got to plan it out. $76 for a BC football game? Huh. Yeah, we could use a little shot in the arm. Dan? Carry over to Colgate on Tuesday? They did not like your use of the term cripple, Dan. Depends what you call shorts weather, Dom. High today's like upper 40s. San Diego Cuse is going to get lost in some Mexican telenovela and forget to watch the game. What's that about basketball, Dan? Are you talking about basketball? Well, there will be no wind or rain in the stadium. I can guarantee you that, Tom.
This is the RomanoCars.com pregame show presented by Point Guard Advisors and Charles Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electrical.
We're about 90 out, 90 minutes out. 90 seconds would be dramatic. About an hour and a half out from Cuse and Boston College today. Brian Higgins with you. Our pregame coverage rolls along this morning. Still to come later on. We'll hear from QB1 Kyle McCord. We'll hear from Orange head coach Fran Brown as we get closer and closer and closer to kick off a time today. But what we like to do at this point of our pregame show is get a little insight on the opponent today. That opponent is Boston College, as these teams have been playing now for 100 years. The 58th all-time meeting is today. The Orange lost in the Dome last year. They won at Chestnut Hill 2 years ago, so we'll see if they can get another road win at BC here today. Earlier this week, I had a chance to catch up with former Eagles quarterback Scott Mutrin, who is one of the analysts on their radio broadcast. And we began the conversation on this idea. What has happened to BC? September, one of the hottest teams in the country, one of the surprise teams in the country. New head coach Bill O'Brien, a 4-1 start, beat Florida State. Kind of before we knew what Florida State was all about. Almost went into Missouri, gave them a big scare, tight loss on the road at an SEC team. Since last 3 games, 3 losses in a row, and now a bye week. So we started with Scott on this. What is the biggest difference, BC, now from then?
The biggest change is just playing a complete football game. BC got away with it, I would say, in the Michigan State and Western Kentucky games where they had good second-half performances to propel them to wins, but they haven't played a full 4 quarters, and it hurt them. Virginia, they came out like gangbusters in a bad second half. Virginia Tech, that was a good 1 quarter, a great 1 quarter, and 3 poor quarters. And then, this past game against Louisville, you get a 20-point lead and can't hold on at home. It's just the lack of ability to finish games or to play complete games is what's hurt them the most.
First-year head coach Bill O'Brien coming back to his home area. Obviously, we know his history of the NFL with the Texans and the success he had getting Penn State back on track. What has Bill brought to the scene there in his first year of a guy that, he's been around the block a time or two?
Yeah, I think credibility and accountability are 2 strong things to think about. With the pedigree that you just mentioned, he can walk into a room and he's going to, demand respect from the players, because if they're all trying to play at the next level, there's someone that has coached at that level and been very successful at that level, so he knows what it takes. And then the accountability of, it's not always going to be easy, right? And things aren't always going to go your way. How do you respond to adversity? How do you pick your teammates up? How do you build a foundation that can be repeated for success over and over? And you want to hold players to that. And players these days, honestly, they crave that. They want to be held accountable. They want to know that they can, do their job, and the guy next to them, they can trust on him to do that as well. And that's something that, it takes some time to build, but it's something that Bill is trying to establish with the identity of this team and what it's going to look like in years to come.
How comfortable is he, like, in his skin in the job? You know, like, every interview I've seen with him here, he looks like 9,000 more percent relaxed than I've ever seen him before. You know, back in his home area, he's got BC. Is that the sense you've gotten, Scott?
Yeah, I think, you get Bill O'Brien at a great time, right? He's in his coaching career. If you would have got Bill O'Brien, when he went to Penn State back in the day, I think you would have seen an ambitious coach that had some success and wanted to see how far he can go. And I think the experiences at the end of his regime at Houston, probably humbled him a little bit this past season with the Patriots, with the debacle that they had there, probably gave him, humbled him a little bit, but didn't, detract the fact that he knew that he could go to BC and he knew what, he could do at BC. I think that's the biggest thing is he knows what Boston College football is about and what BC needs to do to be successful. And I think you see that comfort is because he has a plan and he knows what he wants to build there. He's seen what's been successful there and he's excited to go about that and to get it done. And I think that is something that you just really notice. Yes, personally, it's great because all his family's in the area. He's closer to home and all that. But I do think he knows and has known for a long time that Boston College is a job that he can win at and be successful at.
Yeah, I'd say, that part of it, like their careers have had completely different trajectories to where they're at is very similar between him and Fran Brown of, embracing the idea of what the job is they just took and, attacking it with not just a general plan, but a specific plan. It's certainly working so far for both. We got Scott Mutryn with us from the BC Radio Network. All right, so the first thing I thought when I saw BC on the field this year, we know Bill's offensive background, and we've known Thomas Castellanos here for the last year. And last year, he's running all over the place. It's kind of like a chicken with his head cut off in the best of ways at point. It feels like Bill has harnessed that in a positive way to some extent this year. What has the Bill O'Brien effect on Thomas been?
Well, I think the biggest thing that they've tried to drill into Thomas is to not make those big mistakes. If you look back at some of the games last year when BC lost, they see the mistakes that Thomas made really put them in a bind and really hurt them to win football games. And I think they've coached him up a little bit to not always have to make an explosive play every single time and to not turn the football over. And I think that's important in the maturation of Thomas. I do think what you've noticed in the last couple games, though, is his indecisiveness has been a problem for BC because part of, like you mentioned, the chicken with the head cut off thing is that unpredictability is very difficult for defenses to corral. And it seems like Thomas is sometimes afraid to pull it and run it when he should, and sometimes afraid to throw it when he should throw it. And I think that just half a click of him just not trusting it and letting it fly has been some of the reason you've seen the struggles in that BC offense. It's almost like you have to be willing to find a middle ground. Like, don't take away his superpower and his legs that make him so unpredictable, but yet just try to reel him in from some of those really disastrous decisions and turnovers that can change the whole complex of a game. And there were, 3 or 4 games last year where BC's in control and he has some really bad turnovers that changed the game. And even the Virginia game, this year is a game BC's rolling and he has a really bad interception that kind of changed the whole complex of that game. So I think they have to find that healthy balance with him and let him go. And he just needs to just go and play and just trust his eyes and just be decisive because he's so tough to defend when he's decisive.
All right, another Cuse-related guy we got to ask you about is Doug Marrone, who's on the staff as the whatever the heck he is, special assistant analyst, whatever the heck he's doing with his best friend Bill O'Brien. Any idea what Doug's doing back there with Bill and on game day for all this stuff?
Yeah, he's the consigliere. He just, he's there for Bill as a great guidance with that NFL experience, with his success as a coach. I don't think you can have enough quality coaches on your staff. BC has 3 former NFL head coaches on the staff with Bill O'Brien, Marone, and Rob Chudzinski. So if you can have great coaches on your staff, that only helps to it. I know he's working a lot with the offense and the offensive line, and you couldn't ask for a better guy to do that. Nice guy. I've had a chance to meet him sometimes. It's weird when you wear the hat I wear. You come as a former player, but you're also media. So people try to, like, they're worried what they can talk to you about and what they can say to you. They're like, what hat am I dealing with? Am I dealing with former player who cares about the program, or am I dealing with some guy who's trying to get some dirt for the game? So, especially when you're new to the program, I think you kind of have your radar up a little bit, like, who's this guy over here and what's he asking me all these questions about? But he's been very nice to me when I've talked to him.
I'd say one of Doug's geniuses.
It must be because offensive. Well, it's because offensive linemen love me, because they're all, as a former quarterback, you take care of those guys. You know how to butter up. I know how to butter up offensive linemen.
There you go. Like, if a quarterback doesn't know how to do that, like, you're not going to be the quarterback for long because they're not going to block as well for you. So there you go. Doug back in the day, here's one of the tricks he did. He'd bring in our radio broadcast and, like, the local beat reporter, like, the day before the game, and, like, 10-minute, like, blitz through the game plan, like, off the record. But that way, like, you knew for the broadcast, like, if they were calling a smart game and it was just being screwed up by others, essentially. Like, he'd let you behind the scenes to know if, like, the stuff he put in made sense or not.
I like that. That's actually a pretty good idea. And then if they use it the right way, they can kind of see it and know the direction of the game and how well or poorly it's going. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's one where, like, well, there was a great play call. They didn't convert it, but the idea was good. All right, last thing for you, Scott. What are you expecting from this game here this week? BC got him in the Dome last year. I know Syracuse won in Boston 2 years ago. New coaches, both teams. What are your thoughts heading in?
Well, it's a different team, right? Meaning Syracuse from last year and years past with the Dino Babers system. I really like what Fran Brown's doing there. I think you're seeing him embracing the culture and the attitude of Syracuse football and how it was. I really I've enjoyed seeing them compete. I'm a huge fan of McCord. I know he had a really tough game against Pitt. That defense has, been hell on a lot of people, so you kind of give them a pass there. But you're not often going to see that kind of, things happen, but I really like the way he plays the game. He's not afraid to push the ball downfield. I know he's got some interceptions, but he's got a really confident way about him, which I really appreciate as a former quarterback. I like the way he can layer the ball on different levels and be able to use his legs to create some more time. I mean, he's not as dynamic as probably quarterbacks you've had in the past, but I do like the way he runs that offense, and he's a guy that can make every throw on the field. I mean, it's great having Gadsden back. It was a really bummer watching him get hurt last year. I thought he was a really special talent. Pena has been really good for you guys as well. He's a really dynamic guy in the slot that can cause some problems. I'm concerned about him this week, to be 100% honest. Mm-hmm. I really like the way in which he plays. He reminds me a little Restrepo from Miami. So I like the Syracuse offense. I think, they're probably a year away from meaning like next year, getting to kind of what they're truly going to be, but the identity in which they've established so far, and that's a credit to Fran Brown. I've liked what they've done. I've liked what they've seen. They compete. They play hard defensively. They're going to come downhill. They're super aggressive. Seems to be a pattern in a lot of these ACC teams and a lot of teams BC has played. Very aggressive defenses that get after the quarterback and looking to create some sacks and some negative plays. And that's going to be, that's something BC has struggled with. And when BC gets an obvious passing down, they've struggled. Virginia Tech really put them in a bind when BC had to throw it. So if Syracuse is going to have success versus BC, they're going to have to, turn it into a game where they get ahead and then BC has to play one-dimensional, and that's just not how BC wants to play. But if BC is able to run the football a little better than they've had in the weeks past and be able to use some of their, play-action game and not turn the football over, I like the matchup, for them. But I've really been impressed with Syracuse, and minus that, last Pitt game, been, liked what I've, seen from them this year.
It's very important to minus the last pit game when you're doing those calculations. But always good to chat with our guy Scott Mutrin of the Boston College radio broadcast, who joined us on the Holbrook Heating Hotline, brought to us by HolbrookHeating.com. And I think it's going to be an interesting game today. It just. I went through, we've gone through the schedule, and let's break down the schedule. And we've been doing it for months and months and months and months and months. And my thoughts really haven't changed. I go back to this whole stretch of which we're now nearing the end this week and next week. It was however many games in a row, like 6-7 games. I'm like, who's got a nice coin? Flippity flip. And yeah, like I think Syracuse is a better team than Boston College. If you tell me Boston College wins the game today, like I'm not going to fall over in shock. If you tell me Syracuse wins the game today, I would say, yeah, sure. That's just the way it is this year with the schedule. And you know what? Close and late. Kyle McCord? Okay, I'm good. I'm good with it. Like I will sign up and take my chances with those situations in every game on the rest of Syracuse's schedule. If you tell me it's close and late and Kyle McCord is upright and available, let's go. Time for a little This Day in SU football history, brought to you by our friends at Shep Family Funeral Home. Celebrate your loved one with help from Shep Family Funeral Home. Visit shepfamily.com. So I don't know how this didn't occur to me till yesterday. Somebody brought it up in the chat. And where have I been? Because I bring up this game more than anybody walking planet Earth today, I think. More than even the guy that was involved in it. But we are 20 years on, not to the day, but 20 years on to the month from the Diamond Ferry game. 20 years from the Diamond Ferry game. It was 20 years ago, November 2004, that the Diamond Ferry game occurred in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, in which Diamond was the Big East offensive and Big East defensive player of the week, and for good measure, almost returned. Was it a punt or a kick? He almost had a touchdown on special teams, too. Oh, my goodness. The Diamond Ferry game ran for more than 100, had a pick six, did the whole thing with a thick Boston accent. God bless the Diamond Ferry game. I love the Diamond Ferry game. I love it. We talked yesterday on the show about the unintended consequences of the Diamond Ferry game, which realistically kept Coach P around for another month, which then led to Greg Robinson. There were some negative consequences of the Diamond Ferry game. I regret nothing. I love the Diamond Ferry game. It is one of my favorite games in the history of Syracuse sports. Certainly of games that didn't actually really mean anything. It is really up there. The Diamond Ferry game should be celebrated always. We are the 20th anniversary month. It happened about 3 weeks from now. We are the 20th anniversary of the Diamond Ferry game. We're in the place of the Diamond Ferry game. I'm not sure who has Diamond Ferry energy today. Marlo Wax has always wanted a goal line carry. Can we hook up Marlo Wax with a goal line carry today? I don't know why you'd have any reason to do that. LaQuinn Allen's there. A Marlo Wax goal line carry could have real Diamond Ferry game energy today. Yes. Let's channel it. That's This Day in SU football history, brought to you by the Shep Family Funeral Home. All right, we'll take a break, detail you some Syracuse roster injury notes when we come back. Next hour still to come. We'll hear from the QB. He's Kyle McCord. We'll hear from the head coach. He is Fran Brown. All that as we mosey along on this Saturday morning on Cuse Sports Talk, CuseSportsTalk.com, live on Cuse Sports Talk YouTube, and, of course, wherever you are listening on ESPN Radio and the Cuse. Oh, I love the Diamond Ferry game. I love it so. The crazy thing is I didn't even see the Diamond Ferry game because I was calling the Syracuse basketball game. Oh, yeah, Marlo's in the right. I've talked to Marlo about this before. That he's like, because, I mean, obviously he came in as a running back, but he was the same class as Sean Tucker. That he's like, yeah, I wouldn't mind a carry or two before my career's over. That game was nuts. Like, Damian Rhodes and Walter Reyes both got hurt in the game, I think. And then Ferry just comes in. He ran for like $120. I was in whatever MVP arena in Albany was called at the time. It was probably the Pepsi Arena at the time for Syracuse Siena. Craig fourth homecoming game. Jerry McNamara, I think, had like his only career dunk in that game. Paulie and I are sitting there just getting, and this is before you've got like live stats at your fingertips for everything in the olden times. Just getting updates every commercial break. Like, what the hell? Andy Jones was our studio guy. Like, every break he's coming on back, it's like, well, this just happened. It's like, what the hell is going on back there? Oh, the Diamond Fairy game. What a moment. Man, 9-2 versus undefeated Miami would be a lot of fun, Dan. That would be some fun. That would give, not quite. It wouldn't be quite that level, because I don't want to say it would be that level. That would be unfair to this game. That would at least, in the vague ballpark, put you in touch with the 92 Miami game. It wouldn't be that. I mean, that was like number 1 versus number 6, but yeah, that's crazy. It would be just a little 92 vibes. Like that game, I mean, that's one of the most, that may be in my lifetime the most anticipated game in Syracuse history that I remember. Like it wouldn't be, because Syracuse was like number 6 in the country going into that one, but you'd at least be in the ballpark. That's wild. Like he didn't start the game at running back and still got 28 carries. Yeah, Damian was going crazy before he got hurt. I forget if Reyes played in that game or didn't play at all because he was hurt. Yeah, Rhodes was going nuts and got hurt. Yeah, it's Nick. It's the Nick, Jen. It is always the Nick. It is Knickerbocker Arena. It will always be the Nick. That is a fact. I guess Reyes didn't play in that game. He must have been hurt already. Damian Rhodes had 8 carries for $107 and a score. Diamond 28 carries, 141. He had 28 carries. Matt Ryan QBing BC. I think he was a freshman. Oh, Haynes King's back? Oh, that's intriguing, San Diego Cuse. That makes that game, is that in Atlanta or in Miami? That makes that game a little spicier.
This is the RomanoCars.com pregame show, presented by Point Guard Advisors and Charles Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electrical.
All right, back at it here on this Saturday. It's game day. It's Cuse game day. A little more than an hour away from opening kickoff. Cuse in Boston College today, just past noon. Game is listenable on your radio at TK99, of course, on the Syracuse Sports Network with Matt, Adam, and Tim. The game is watchable on the CW, wherever you get your CW. Streaming options are various, I guess. CW has an app. I don't know if you can actually... The CW is kind of weird, but if you have cable of some sort, Spectrum, maybe, YouTube TV or something, you can stream the CW on the go. I may or may not have a Roku stick hooked up in the conference room today to get some YouTube TV cooking for the ball game today. But plenty of good ways to take it in. And whatever works for you this week or worked for you last week, keep it in mind because next week, again, Syracuse is now the official. They are the CW's college team. because Cuse and Cal next week will be on the CW as well. Reminder, as always, and we'll be back there not next week but the week after for your home field advantage at the Marriott Syracuse downtown. Your home advantage for breakfast, lunch, or dinner any day. Home of the home game tailgate. Unbeatable with free parking and the shuttle to the game. They got the $5 shuttle beer buffet situation going this year. I mean, come on with that value. We'll be back out there 3 hours before kick prior to both UConn and Miami on the 23rd and the 30th later this month. Cal, of course, next week is in California, so we will not be doing a home game tailgate before that one, but we'll detail the programming for that. It's a little wonky next week because of the basketball game. We don't need to run you through all that right now, but we'll have lots of stuff going with Cuse Youngstown State at 1, Cuse Cal at 3 next week. We have a full day, full smorgasbord of coverage coming for you right here on the radio and on Cuse Sports Talk next Saturday. A couple of roster notes. Fran Brown dropped this on Orange Nation a couple of days ago, and this caught me off guard. Marcellus Barnes likely out for the year. Star freshman, Under Armour All-American, had been out with like the back spasm thing. He hit that hard fall early in the season, missed a couple games. I had kind of stopped thinking about it. He'd returned. He'd played the last 2 games. Fran did not detail further if this was related or separate or not, but it sounds like Marcellus, unfortunately, being shut down for the rest of the season. He's already played more games than the requisite amount for a red shirt, though his talent level is not necessarily a 5-year-in-school guy anyway, so we'll see how things shuffle in the secondary one. Would expect Jaden Bellamy to move back in the starting lineup at corner, Clarence Lewis remaining the other corner. Third corner, that'll be something to keep an eye on today. Do we see more Greg Delane? Do we see, Devin Grant rotating back from safety and Justin Barron rotating back to safety if they need a third corner or when they need a third corner? That is something that bears watching today. Also, last week, Zeed Haynes officially back with the football program after he's been away dealing with personal matters for the last month and a half or so. So it was good to see him back at the sideline last week. Apparently, he's been back with the team, trying to get back in conditioning this week. Fran says that he's not ready to play yet. Fran has told us some things like that before. So a grain of salt there. So I would be stunned to see Zeed today, but I've been stunned before this season of who we were going to see on the field at various points. Will be intriguing to see if Zeed gets out there as a certifiable deep threat, unlike any other on the roster, before the end of this season. So a couple of little roster notes for you for Syracuse football heading into this one. All right, we'll take a break. We'll spin forward to our final hour of our RomanoCars.com pregame coverage after this, and we'll go into the recent November travails and what Syracuse has a legit opportunity to do if they can win today, and my oh my, if they can somehow win today and next week. We'll get into that when we come back. We'll hear from the quarterback before too long, Kyle McCord, the head coach as well, in Fran Brown. We'll step aside for a few. Head to the 11 o'clock hour after this here on Cuse Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.
Today.
Sling on his arm, that would indicate that is something new. Is the wind dying down? This wind in the forecast was not there the last time I looked, like 2 days ago. Let's look at the hourly. Back to the hourly. I'm seeing it dying a little, I guess. There's a red flag warning until 6 and a small craft advisory until 5. The heck's a red flag warning? Red flag warning. Is that for beaches? Any fire that develops will catch and spread quickly. No outdoor burning. All right, so don't light anything on fire if you're at the game today. And if you're at the game today, small craft advisory, northwest winds 10 to 20 KT. The heck's a KT? KT. Wind. What's that mean? Oh, not. It's nautical. Not. Waves 1 to 2 feet, so you don't want waves on the football field. Where in Massachusetts coastal waters, Boston Harbor, Rhode Island coastal waters, Narragansett Bay. Conditions will be hazardous to small craft. So, okay, if you're going to the Boston College football game today, don't take a small boat and don't light anything on fire and don't be an inexperienced mariner. especially if you're operating a smaller vessel. Check. No Dennis Jacques. That would be the hope, bowling ball. Where are you seeing that, San Diego Cuse? Carlson? That is a sling. Oh, yeah. Yes, he is. Emily has moved on to cover the Vikings. So it looks like Carlson's in charge for the rest of the season. I didn't even think about the kicking game. Yee. Yes, San Diego Cuse, that is true.
Cars.com pregame show presented by Point Guard Advisors and Charles Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electrical.
All right, back here as we move into the final hour of our program, about an hour away from the opening kick today, and a windy morning from all reports in Chestnut Hill. The flags atop the stadium are rippling. You know, we've been thinking about that in quarterback perspective. I've now had a horrendous thought. That means it'll be windy when they're kicking the ball today, too. Special teams! See if the winds die down at all. There's a small craft advisory in the area. Is the football a small craft? It could capsize. All right, it is November. It gets windy in November. What's the various sayings? I mean, trying to re-quote Coach Mack after the fact is always difficult because he never even quoted himself the same way twice, but it was something to the effect of maybe September, sometimes October, but always they'll remember November because November and remember rhyme. So does remember in October and remember in September. But that's neither here nor there. The point is people remember how you end your football season. How you end your football season is important. There are 4 games left in the Orange football season this year. 5 games total in November. Last week against Virginia Tech, the game was played on November the 2nd. And as we know, Syracuse won it in overtime. Which means today, if Syracuse wins in Boston, that the Orange have a chance to win today consecutive games in the month of November. You want to hazard a guess how many times that's happened this century? That Syracuse has had a season in which they have won consecutive games in November this century? It's 2024, going back to 2000? The answer is 5. The Orange won 2 in a row in 2000, won 3 out of 4 in November. In 2002, this was kind of mired by the whole 1-6 start. They won the first 2 games of November, did finish 4-8, but had the upset win over Virginia Tech that we talked about a lot last week. Fast forward a decade, a.k.a. bypassing all of G-Rob in the first 3 years of Doug. Doug Moreau, now on Boston College's side today, he won 3 out of his 4, including a 3-game winning streak to end the November portion of the schedule in 2012, won the bowl game as well, the Pinstripe Bowl, to win 4 in a row to close the season. That, in 2012, is the only 3-game November winning streak in the month of November in the 2000s for Syracuse. Remember that. The year after that, Scott Schaefer had a strong close to his opening season. Remember, they started 0-2 with Drew Allen, then switched to Terrell Hunt and rebounded. They beat Wake in Maryland back when both of them were in the ACC. Wake still is. Maryland, that was the only ACC game between Syracuse and Maryland. Orange went down to College Park and won. Syracuse's next trip to College Park years later went significantly worse. But Syracuse won consecutive games then. And then in 2018, the last time they had a Boffo winning season, winning 10 games as we know with Dungy, they did win 3 out of 4 in November, including in Chestnut Hill against Boston College. The consecutive wins were Wake Forest and Louisville. I say all of that to tell you this. If Syracuse wins today, it will be consecutive wins in the month of November. A thing that has basically not happened this century. 5 times this century. If Syracuse wins today and then by golly hops a plane and flies across the United States of America and lands in San Francisco and then heads to Berkeley and beats California next week and wins, gosh darn it, 3 games in a row, it would become the second time this century that it would happen. And then if they could do something wild, like now we're getting crazy, like coming back home as a heavy favorite and beating UConn and win 4 in a row in the month of November. Well, that hasn't happened. Winning 4 in a row in the month of November since Donovan McNabb was a junior. If stuff like that starts happening, again to quote Coach Mack, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, it would be Christmas every day. But dream with me here for a second. If that would happen, then we legit, here in year 1 of Fran Brown, have to, historically, start referencing the Donovan McNabb era, which Fran Brown references all the time because he likes to him, it's the Donovan Darius era. Basically the same thing, though Donovan Darius left after 97, wasn't here for 98, after being a first-round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He and Bucky going back-to-back. But Donovan McNabb during those 4 years, 95, 96, 97, 98, the end of that golden age of Syracuse football, the thing that started in 87, technically the winning seasons continued through 01, but essentially in hindsight it might as well have wrapped up in 98. Donovan McNabb, as starting quarterback, went 13-4 in the month of November. 13-4 in the month of November. Now, they had some wonky Septembers. Back then, they had the opposite problem that Syracuse football has had recently. Which would you rather have? I don't know. Probably the one you had then, though at the time, it didn't feel that way. Donovan McNabb was 13-4 in the month of November. Unfortunately, that also means that Donovan McNabb played 17 games in the month of November. The max we're going to get from Kyle McCord in his Orange career is 5. But let's see how much hay Kyle McCord can make in these 5 November games. He's 1-0. Started off down 21-3 in that one, but he figured it out. He's 1-0. Can he make it 2-0 today? Kyle, the offense, Fran, they got a chance to do something here. You might say, the chance to go to the ACC title game is realistically gone. Not technically gone, but realistically it's gone. A lot of stuff would still have to happen. But if Syracuse can string together some wins here in November, you have a significant opportunity here to do something that you literally haven't done this century. We're a quarter of the way into the century. That would be a good thing. That would be historically noteworthy for Syracuse football. And if they can do it, even though it's Kyle's only year, the hope, new head coach and all that, is it's a launching pad for things to come. We'll see. Because, again, this is one of these coin flip games. This stretch of a month and a half of coin flip games. Almost equally as likely the coin lands on the other side today, and we're talking about something different when we're all back here for the postgame show on ESPN and Q Sports Talk with your calls and everything after the game, 3:30-ish or so. It's entirely possible we're talking about the other side of things. But if it all goes right, now talk about Thanksgiving being less than 3 weeks out. We're setting the table. We're getting the side dishes ready. We're getting ready for the main event. Like, there's a chance here if Syracuse wins some together. Like, that Miami game's been hanging out there all year long to end the month. It's just hanging out there. It's 3 weeks from today. Miami in the Dome. If you win some of these games and Miami remains unbeaten, I'm not saying it's this, because it's not that. In my memory of my lifetime, I don't remember 87 live. In my memory of my lifetime, realistically, the most anticipated Syracuse football game that I can remember in advance was the 92 Miami game in the Dome. Miami undefeated, number 1. Cuse, 1 loss, number 6. Even if Syracuse wins out to them, they'll be 9-2. They won't be 6th in the country, but they'll be ranked. Miami will be highly ranked. There would be buzz and anticipation galore. There's a lot that has to happen. There's 3 football games between now and then. As we know with recent Syracuse football history, that is putting the cart so far before the horse, it's not even worth thinking about. But yet, that's the way this season has gone. You can't help but tease yourself a little bit with these thoughts as we dabble into November here a little bit. We'll take a break. We'll talk to the guy that's made a lot of those thoughts possible here this year. Our weekly conversation with Kyle McCord. When we come back, we are, let's call it 50 minutes out from Syracuse and Boston College today on a windy morning in Chestnut Hill. Back after this here in our Syracuse studios. Not windy at all inside here on Cuse Sports Talk and ESPN Radio. How old was I in 1992? I was 10. 10. Everybody I've ever asked that was there says that when Dan Conley intercepted Gino Torretta the second time in that game, it is the loudest they have ever heard the Dome. Yeah, Amar Parola, he's intriguing, bowling ball. I agree. Like, I think we all thought that would be the King Joseph role this year, but yeah, it's become his. He's intriguing. What's going on in the YouTube? I've been ignoring the YouTube chat. Global Pioneer says, let's go. Let's go. Mitch Takada. Hopefully I explained the best way to watch the game today. Also, like, if you do like one of those short free trials of YouTube TV or Hulu or something like that, or not Hulu, I think DirecTV, you should be able to get CW if you can't get it another way. Just remember to, cancel it after. Or wait a week and then cancel it and need it again next week. Oh, man. R.I.P. Geds. That's one of the all-timers. Yeah, the Owens, I'm sure. Like, if you're going decibel levels, like, the Owens play's got to be top 2 or 3 ever, right? I feel I've talked to people that were at both, and they swear it was louder for the second interception in the Miami game. But again, like, even if you're at both, how are you realistically comparing that? That was, yeah. I mean, it gets loud in there, bowling ball. It gets loud in there. Well, I was at that game, San Diego Cuse. It was loud. That was my freshman year. Yeah, the hard top, yeah, we haven't. I'll be intrigued to see in, like, say the Miami game, although there won't be students at the Miami game. Say you get like a legit sellout, crazed game at some point here in the next few years. What it can actually be at that year. Yeah, Nebraska obviously would have been very loud as well. Like, the Clemson win in 17 was loud, but considering it wasn't full, like, I'm sure it didn't come close to touching those other ones. Obviously, basketball loud's kind of different. There's just not as many people in there. Oh, yeah. Like, if you, on like a legit loud Dome game, you will leave with ears ringing. ears ringing. That's why all people that were like, when they were talking about the new roof, it's like, build a new stadium, build a separate basketball arena. I'm like, you're missing the point on what makes Syracuse unique. You do not want to, in this day and age, lose the thing that makes you unique.
Talk.com. This is the RomanoCars.com pregame show presented by Point Guard Advisors and Charles Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electrical.
Friday is with you as we move along on this Saturday morning, getting you ready for Cuse and Boston College. Well, every week in the 315, we chat with our guy Kyle McCord, brought to you by Davidson Ford of Clay and Davidson Chevy of Rome. And, of course, every week on CuseSportsTalk.com and the Cuse Sports Talk YouTube page, we have Kyle do the Kyle McCord Show, which is live at 11 o'clock on Tuesdays, which means that you, wherever you are, can get on Cuse Sports Talk at 11 o'clock in the morning, a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesdays, and go into the chat and typey, whatever question you want to type for Kyle, and then I will be sitting here reading what you've typed, and I will ask it to Kyle, and it's going to blow your mind this. He just answers them. How's that? You there, like middle of a Tuesday morning, minding your own business at work, can pretend you're working. You're not. You're watching the Kyle McCord Show. You fake spreadsheet up. I don't care. You type question, and you ask Kyle a question, he'll answer it. It's a beautiful thing. We look forward to having Kyle back here this upcoming Tuesday at 11 o'clock and every Tuesday for the rest of the season. All right. As mentioned, we talk to Kyle every week, brought to you by our friends at Davidson. Let's get into that conversation. And the first thing I asked him this week is, coming off an exhilarating win, crazy come from behind, have had some gut-wrenching losses this season. What sits with you more? What's the toughest? What's the most interesting thing to try to come down from? Big win or tough loss?
I think dealing with a loss is always tougher, because the next game can't come soon enough. But I think now that it's kind of similar to the win, getting late in the season, knowing that every single game, every single, rep you have in practice, like it all matters. And so now I think, the guys are really starting to realize that. And, I think, like I said, every single game at this point is it kind of determines the outcome of your season. So we had a good day of practice yesterday, so a solid start to the week. And I know, Coach Fran hasn't been letting us, enjoy that win too much, right back on us, Sunday and going into Monday.
All right, it was November 2nd on Saturday. Novembers have not been great around here recently. It's, from the sound of it, Fran talked about that with you guys. To get the first one, how much does that help you guys, erase the past, change the momentum, however you want to phrase it going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said this post-game after the game on Saturday, and, I feel like in November, down 21-3 in like the middle of the third quarter, I just, teams before might have quit at that point, but there was no quit in the team. Just kept swinging, kept fighting, and then ultimately to kind of will our way to a win. Definitely was not perfect, but to get a November win is huge. And so now it's all about how can you build off of that, just keep that momentum going.
You guys have been in this close late situation a lot. Is it calming now because you've done it so many times? Yeah. Is it just all right, we did this, let's just go do it again? I
mean, during spring ball and then especially fall camp, every single practice we did a 2-minute drill of some sort, and all different type of scenarios. You got 2 minutes, 58 seconds with 2 timeouts and you're down 4 and you need a touchdown, or, it's 58 seconds and you're down 1, you need a field goal and you got no time, from all ends of the spectrum. There hasn't really been a 2-minute situation that we haven't worked on. And, I think that we're comfortable in those situations, and, we train hard, and I feel like the guys, when it's late in the game, still feel good and still feel ready to go. And, I know obviously LeQuint especially, still running like a madman that late in the game. So, I think that, I think the longer the game goes, we've shown that we're ready to handle it.
All right. In theory, overtime, right? By by the nature of it, you guys are tied. In theory, it's a crapshoot, right? In theory, you guys have won both here, and it didn't feel like a crapshoot. It felt like you guys showed up and like, yeah, we're ready for this. Why are you guys ready to keep going at that point beyond the 60 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I think practice. I mean, we practice hard. Practices are super competitive. Like, we did a 2-minute situation yesterday in practice, and like, you would think there was like $1,000 on the line on both sides of the ball, just the way that we're competing with each other. And so when we get in those situations, it's nothing that we haven't done before. And me going up against our defense every day in practice, like they're good, and they give me a tough look. And so that's really good. It's iron sharpen iron on both sides.
And Marlo Wax is back at practice now. How much tougher has that made it for you guys on offense to deal with that guy again?
I mean, he's during practice, it's not fun going against him because he's like calling our plays out before we run it, and we run a run play and he's stuffing the running back at the line of scrimmage, and it's not fun. But then fast forward to Saturday, I'm happy that we're in the same uniform.
He was outstanding this week. I mean, serious injury, miss half the season, like that can screw with you in 8 million different ways.
Yeah.
To see him step back in and be that guy again, what does that show you?
I think, to me, obviously playing through some physical pain, like, that says a lot about him, 100%. And he's a tough kid. But I think just the way that he stayed engaged when he was out, like he didn't miss a beat in the defense. And I think you can tell that. And obviously from week one to now, our defense has evolved and they've changed. And, I think, their calls are obviously different, and we're doing different things, and but he stayed engaged the entire time and still was one of the leaders even though he was out. And now that he's back to 100% physically, didn't skip a beat, and I think obviously that showed on Saturday.
Our weekly visit with Kyle McCord brought to you by Davidson Ford and Davidson Chevy. You mentioned LeQuint, and I'd say his 2 best games of the season are, it's not coincidentally, right? It's the 2 games you won in overtime here. It's UNLV and it's this past game. What did LeQuint show you this game? Because, my goodness, he was everywhere the whole 60 minutes.
I mean, he's a little crazy, and I tell him that. I tell him, like, you're a little messed up in the head, but like in a good way. He's like, I know. But I mean, he's a lot of fun to play with. I mean, just super passionate. And when we were down 21-3 after Virginia Tech scored, he came over, he looked at me, he's like, whatever you do, I got your back, like, let's go. And to have a guy like that who just runs his tail off every single time he touches the ball, and pass protection, and I think literally as the game goes on, I think the harder he runs, and it's been a lot of fun, and he's definitely the passion and the energy and the heart of the team.
You guys got the run-pass balance a little more even this week. Like at the Pitt game, it was way out of whack, and it's clearly been leading past most of the season. Well, how did you notice that balance what you guys were seeing from the defense as the game went along?
Yeah, I mean, I think that early on, a reason why we were kind of struggling a little bit was we were not being great in the pass game. Whether I was, missing a read here and there, or, missing a throw, or, dropped the ball, like whatever it was, our pass game wasn't as efficient. And I feel like in order to have both sides going, you need to be able to run the ball effectively and then pass the ball effectively. And we really started to establish the run game there in the second half, which I think opened up the pass game for us. And so it was definitely complimentary. And I don't know if I really, threw the ball down the field all too much, which is, and listen, we won. So, I could care less. And I feel like it was just kind of what the defense was giving us. And I think, we did a really good job of running the ball. I think that's probably the best we ran the ball all year, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was your least amount of yardage all season, but it's still 280 and 2 touchdowns. It's not like you weren't getting to fling it around out there. It was clear, like, we could see it like on TV if you're in the stadium, like Fran was frustrated late in the first half. Take me to the locker room. What was halftime like? Compared to other weeks, like, was that as fired up as Fran's been at halftime with you guys?
Yeah, but I mean, I think we needed it. And when the coaches first came into the locker room at halftime, I know Coach Fran was getting on them. But I think in that moment when there's no coaches there, I think the players were getting on each other a little bit and just challenging each other to play harder. And when the ball comes your way, make the play. And when you have an opportunity to change the game, like, you have to step up. And I feel like guys really took that to heart. And then when we were talking to the coaches and talking to Coach Fran, it was really just, him challenging us and all year. And from the time I got here in the spring to fall camp to the beginning of the season, the offense has always been, the one that gets us going. And, we weren't doing that at all. Obviously, only scoring 3 points in the first half. And so he challenged us, and I think we responded. That felt like, we ran the ball, like I said, extremely well. And then started to win one-on-one matchups on the outside. Obviously, Justice Ross, for example, catching the ball, breaking a tackle, and running it 50-plus yards for a touchdown. Those were the type of plays that we needed to have happen. And the guys obviously stepped up.
Yeah, he certainly got you going to the second half. His first 2 touchdowns, his first catch in his Syracuse career was that play, go figure. In a halftime situation like that can happen. It can be negative, right? If it's not a good locker room, you guys are just getting on each other. Why does it work for you guys?
I feel like all the guys know it's not personal, and when I'm getting on somebody, it's because I want to win, and I know that they're capable of playing better, and I know that we're capable of winning those type of games, and so I think nobody takes it personal, I'm trying to get after somebody just cause, and I expect them to hold me to the same standard as well, and I know that for some teams isn't always the case, but for us, I think it's important just to be completely honest with each other and what we expect and what we need, and so when situations like that pop up, it's like no panic, and I know that I'm going to do my job for my brother, and I'm going to do my job because I know the defense is relying on us, and so I think in those situations come about throughout the game, it's no panic, it's no stress, and we just go out and do what we've done all year long.
All right, you mentioned Justice, so he's been back for a few games. This is the first game he really featured. You got him the ball 4 times. 2 of them were big touchdowns, including that long one which sparked you. What's it like to have this guy as a weapon, and what does he do to round out the receiving core right now?
Yeah, he's got a lot of experience. Obviously, I think he had 40-something catches last year for 700, 800 yards at Colorado State. And then transferred over, obviously wasn't 100% physically. And, he's when he's ready to go physically, which, I feel like obviously he is, and people saw that. He's a really good player. He's physical. He runs good routes. He has really good hands. And then he can make plays with the ball in his hand. And both of his touchdowns were catch and running for a touchdown. And I feel like he just adds another element to the receiver room, and his skill set is a little different than Jackson and a little different than Treb and OG and all those guys. And so it's a very diverse skill set in that room, which I think just adds another element to the offense.
Yeah, you mentioned his run after catch. 74 of his 88 yards were after catch. Looking at your team on last game, more than 200 yards after catch by the guy. So that's a very efficient game after that. All right, last thing, Kyle. BC this week. What do you expect out of this one?
Yeah, it's going to be a physical game. It's going to be two really competitive teams going after it, and obviously they're well coached. Got a lot of experience in that coaching staff, being in the NFL for a while, and so we're gonna have our hands full. It's gonna be a good environment too up there. Noon kickoff, so getting up and getting after it right away. And a November game in the ACC with a lot on the line. So you can't draw it up much better than that.
Kyle McCord getting ready to play here about half an hour out from Boston College. We chat as always on Tuesdays, and love to bring that back for you here on Saturday to hear as you're getting ready for the game today. And as always, any visit we have with Kyle McCord is brought to you by Davidson Ford of Clay Davidson Chevy of Rome. QB matchup today. Man, talking about different styles of ball players. Kyle McCord, well, we've talked about Little League Kyle and all that this season. He's primarily a pocket guy, prototypical. Thomas Castellanos is whatever the opposite is. He's 5'9" in the roster. He is a tiny little guy. Woo, but my goodness, he can scoot around back there. He's hard to corral. And with the tutelage this year of Bill O'Brien, certainly a noted quarterback, offensive guy over the years, Tom Brady, all the people he's worked with over time. Penn State, he was working with Christian Hackenberg back at Penn State when he was there as the head coach. That was one of his main QB recruits at the time. You look at the great work he's done with quarterbacks over his years. You look at Castellanos' numbers this year, he's still running, not nearly as much as last year. He's averaging about 50 yards fewer a game on the ground. touchdown to interception ratio 17-4. The Bills got him pretty cleaned up there in the pocket and stuff like that. So we'll see which version of Castellanos we get today. He has struggled somewhat here as part of BC's 3-game losing streak right now, but the QB matchup should be interesting today with just such the extremely different styles between the two guys. Add in the wind factor. It's a windy morning out in Chestnut Hill right now. How does that, if at all, affect Kyle McCord in the passing game today? It's more of a short strike passing game. And then obviously, how does that affect the kicking game? Oh my goodness, I can't handle any more special teams drama this season, but it be a blowing and a swirling in Chestnut Hill right now. We'll take a break here. We'll check in with the Orange head coach. He is Fran Brown. See what Fran had to say getting ready for this one when we come back after this on Q Sports Talk and ESPN Radio. Yeah, we did see that. That's what I was just looking up, San Diego Cuse. What's that guy's deal? Yeah, Valari. Could it be add in the wind? Like Valari would be my next thought. I mean, fingers crossed, right? Like as long as LaQuinn Allen is healthy enough, anyway. Is Wax playing? I don't see why not. He's played the last 2 weeks. We've not heard anything to the contrary. Yeah, what's this Jameer Thomas's deal? Looks like he did a little bit of everything in high school, so keep an eye out for that maybe again today. Oh, the redshirt discussion? Yeah, I never made anything of that. That seemed like a very weird topic from the beginning. That always felt like an odd thing that Fran said out loud. Like, what? Yeah, looks like that Jameer Thomas guy would, wide out, ran the ball, kind of did everything in high school. Like, Marlo wants to win games in this season right now. It'd be wild if he did everything he did last week and then just shut it down. He's like, all right, see you next year. That was fun, guys. You're welcome. Won the game for you. Enjoy the last month. Catch you on the flippity flop. I saw that, San Diego Cuse. They what was the Jeff Goodman tweet was like they They turned it around to avoid an altercation. I'm like, you don't turn a plane around to avoid something. How do you get into a brawl on your charter going to play a top 5 Houston team? What about flying charter could make anybody angry?
This is the RomanoCars.com pregame show presented by Point Guard Advisors and Charles Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electrical.
All right, less than a half hour out, opening kickoff today. Brian Higgins with you. ESPN Radio, Q Sports Talk, Twitch, YouTube, all of it. People in the chat, people getting ready, making preparations for game time today in Chestnut Hill, 100 years on from the first meeting between Syracuse and Boston College. Well, as we know, Fran Brown is both the head coach of the Syracuse Orange football team and joins Stephen Pauly every Thursday at 12:15 on Orange Nation. Every with some caveats, in that this upcoming week with the trip to Cal, he will be joining on Wednesday instead of Thursday because they'll be going out a day early travel-wise for the West Coast trip. But Fran did join Orange Nation on this past Thursday this week. Lots to talk about, as there always is with the head coach. And the first thing that Steve got into, which now may, with the wind factor here this week, play even more into it. We saw changes, at special teams last week. We've seen changes at kicker and whatnot throughout the year. We saw we saw the choice to go for the extra point and force overtime last week instead of go for 2, and obviously that worked out quite well. So Steve asked Fran what all went into that decision at the end of regulation.
You said that you were going for the extra point the entire way. What can be done mid-season about that? And I know you've tried different kickers, and what can you do at this point, or is it something that really just has to be addressed in the offseason and beyond?
He made a kick. He made a 40-40.
Yeah.
I mean, I addressed it. He did it. He's doing his job.
All right, Coach, I want to ask you a question, too. You said something that caught an old guy like me off guard at your presser, and that was playing time sometimes now breaks down to we got to keep guys happy because of the transfer portal. How much does that weigh in, and how do you make those decisions when you're giving playing time?
You still got practice, right? You got to live right off the field and do all those things. But if you practicing extremely hard and the talent level between you and the other guy isn't that huge of a gap, why would I have him in for 79 plays and you not play any? How about he take 60 and then you play 19? Or, you know what I'm saying? Then I'll get a better, stronger, more ready guy in the fourth quarter. It's just like strategizing, being able to set up something so we can strategically have an opportunity in a way of being able to win at the end of the game. So I'm never doing nothing just for you not to leave. If you don't want to be here, then just don't be here. And I really mean that, and I tell them that you could go. But if this talent level is pretty close, and you can go on this spill, have a guy be able to be a little bit more healthier later on, and it's the best thing for the program, and it's the best thing for the team, then I'm going to push it that way. So, that's why it's a competitive environment. That's why so many people play here.
I want to ask a follow-up question on that. This came up on the show literally yesterday, Coach. Felicia Leggett-Jack said after their opener the other night that she benched one of her players because she wasn't being as tough as she wanted her to be. She wanted her to learn a lesson. She benched her for the third quarter, brought her back in for the fourth quarter, and she played really well down the stretch, and they ended up winning the game and pulled away for that victory. I guess my question to you is benching still an effective tactic for coaches? Like when we were all collectively growing up, I know you're a little bit younger than us, but we're all relatively close to the same age. Like that's what coaches did, right? If you weren't doing your job, you got benched. Now with the portal and keeping guys happy and all that, does it create more problems than it's worth, or is benching still an effective tactic?
And it's 100% effective. You're not starting. Everybody wants to start. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants the opportunity to do that, and they're playing. So someone on the bench definitely goes. But that's competition, though. You know, I don't have to bench you because I know how you worked all week, and I know the things that you're going to do. Now, if you're not doing all the right things off the field, then you should be in that position anyway. So usually how you practice is how you'll play. You know, and if you create that environment at practice that's like the game, then it's going to be simple when it comes time for the game. Now, will someone have a bad game? Yeah, that happens, right? But in reference to effort, you know, and knowing your job and doing your job, that's all part of practice. So that's on the coaching.
You know, I know you addressed this after the Virginia Tech game, but wanted to give you, you know, now that we're closer to game time here, wanted to bring up Zeed Haynes again. We saw him on the sidelines. You mentioned he's back with the team. He's back, you know, practicing. I'm sure you have a plan for him. Can you share with us at all what the plan is in terms of getting him back on the field in game action? Will he suit up on Saturday? Where do things stand right now with Zeed Haynes?
He got to get a couple of weeks of practice under his belt, and we just got to keep trying to figure things out that way. He wouldn't be ready to do anything with us. I mean, he just got a chance to come in. He's been working out in the weight room right now and things of that nature. So after that, then we'll move on to field next, you know what I mean, just to see. But it's hard to just come back and play a sport in college. And I'm very demanding. There's a lot of things that we're doing. So it's going to take a little bit of time. But he's working his butt off to try and put himself back on track.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's look ahead to this next opponent. It's Boston College, a team that started 4-1. They've lost 3 games in a row, but they're coming off a bye week. You know, they're scratching and clawing for bowl eligibility. You know you're going to see a very motivated team on Saturday. I mean, what stands out to you about the Eagles?
The defense, they're doing a real good job. I think they got a real good defensive line in Horsley, Brooks, and Donovan, and Neto. I don't know how to pronounce his name right away. Of course, their quarterback, Thomas, number 1. Castellanos is really good. I like Kai. I like Ward. I think that tight end 17, Jeremiah Franklin, he does a real good job. You know, he's a big playmaker. And then you got Bond, who's one of the better receivers in the entire country. And Jaden McGowan, Jaden Skeet, Harris, Gerard Bradley. I think Bradley's really good. They just do a good job all around with all those guys, you know. I'm excited to go against their secondary. I think their secondary is they're some of the better younger corners in the country, you know, and the things that they're doing. I think they got an NFL scheme, so you never really know what they're doing. I mean, they're always moving around, and they go from different fronts and just doing different things. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun matchup to go against those guys, to go up to Boston College to play this rival game. I'm excited about going up there to play against those dudes.
I'm glad you brought up that word rival. It's something that kind of comes up on this show here and there, usually around this time of year when Boston College is either coming to town or Syracuse is going there. Is it important for a program to have a rivalry? Is it important that fans kind of feed into this and look at this as, you know, a traditional rival between Syracuse and BC?
Yeah, it's important as you look at it that way. It has to be. You know, it's just something that's been going on since the 50s. We proximity. I mean, look how close we are. We're both Northeast football teams. And, you know, Boston and Syracuse will always be a rival. You know, it's a big deal. You know what I mean? I think it's something that goes without saying that this has to be a rivalry, you know. It's important that it is. It's important for football. It's important for us up here in the Northeast, and it's important to Syracuse. I mean, of course, no matter who we play, you're a rival to us, but this one stands out a little bit more, and we got to go up there and play against these guys, and it's important that we go up there and just go have fun playing a rival, you know. So it's something that these young kids, they get to talk about years and years from now, you know, on both teams, to be able to always talk, and man, it's just bragging rights for the rest of their lives, you know.
Yeah.
So get to go and do this.
No doubt about it. Any injuries we need to be aware of? You know, I know you said Yassine Willis, you know, still banged up. Anything else that we need to be aware of?
I don't think Marcellus Barnes will play anymore this year, and outside of that, everybody else is good to go.
All right. And I guess just last question, Coach, in terms of winning this game, I mean, what does this game ultimately come down to in your mind against BC?
Just being able to stay together. You know, being able to get into that fourth quarter and fight through the fourth quarter. They're a tough team that is going to compete the entire time. So we're just looking to be ready to fight throughout the fourth quarter and just try to have one more point than those dudes got at the end of the game. You know, I always look at it, you know, I'm watching and just going through stuff, man. because there's no such thing as a bad win. And people always talk about that's a good loss. I don't understand that. So we're just trying to go in and get one more point than they are, and I'm pretty sure they're trying to do the same thing. So if we can come out with one more point, that's what we're looking to go and do.
Fran Brown, not captain of the Moral Victories team. No, he's captain of the actual Victories team. That's how he judges the record. Just a couple of updates on what Fran said there. We told you about the injury, likely season ending to Marcellus Barnes. He's been spotted on the sideline before today's game. Left arm sling on. Not sure exactly what happened or when it happened there, but that is the deal with him. Freshman running back, kick returner Malachi James also not dressed for today's game. The Orange very thin at the running back position right now. Behind LaQuinn Allen, there is another freshman in Jaden Hart. And yeah, on this 20th anniversary month of the Diamond Ferry game, the mind starts wandering. So hopefully we don't need to think about anything like that here today. And speaking of Syracuse and BC as a rivalry, these teams first played 100 years ago. It was October the 18th, 1924. Archbold Stadium. The Orange won that game 10-0. Their next game, go figure, their next game was in the middle of World War II. Saturday, October 28th, 1944. That's aggressive scheduling. All right. And because of the change, BC going to the ACC before Syracuse did, there was actually a gap in scheduling. They did not play just once between 04 and 13, and starting in 13 have gone back to playing every single year. And no reason to think that won't happen from here into the future. All right, time for our last break. We'll tell you about our dream outcome for today from Liverpool Pool and Spa. We'll do that next year on Q Sports Talk at ESPN Radio. All right, what are we feeling today, people? Cuse win. What do we got? What's the vibe? Vibe check. Vibe check. Final scores. Toss them out. Vibe check. Vibe check. What do we got? Jen's got to win. Big day, LaQuinn Allen from San Diego Cuse. All right. Like that. Like that. That'd be a big one, P. Larmer. That would be equally as big, Alphabet Guy. Like that. 31-21. All right. Everyone's feeling good. Yeah, proof of concept is always good, D. Hayes. I feel you there. It's a deep drive to left field by Castellanos. BC not good at punting? Just an entire game of tragic punting. Play a little wall ball with a Mazda. Will Tom Brenneman does Tom Brenneman have a self-deprecating bone to make fun of that at all today? Oh my goodness. That is one of the biggest wild cards of the day. Will Thom poke fun at himself? Or will he just call them the Orangemen 78 more times here today? Yeah, the entire crew gets a second crack at the same team here. And then a third crack next week. We're just thumbing it up. Heck, last week they're in the Dome. I mean, you're barely at TV. Like, that's as good of a vantage point as you can get at a football game these days from a press box. Not that BC's is terrible, but yeah, I wonder who's that Tom guy's dad? Huh.
This is the RomanoCars.com pregame show presented by Point Guard Advisors and Charles Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electrical.
All right, last few minutes with you. Kickoff. Around about 10 minutes out from a blustery but clear Chestnut Hill as we approach noon on this early November Saturday. Cuse and Boston College for the 58th time. 100 years on from the first ever meeting. Time now for our dream outcome today, brought to you by Liverpool Pool and Spa. This auto comes with all dream outcomes now. It's like an auto feature. It's like when you buy a pool from Liverpool Pool and Spa, they include like stairs into the pool. We include Kyle McCord, 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. It just comes, it's just a base model these days when you order it up. LaQuinn Allen today, dream outcome for the Orange. I'm feeling a second straight 100-yard rushing game day today for LaQuinn. Going into last week, I wasn't sure he'd get 100 in any game all season. Slight change in tactic last week. Worked out very well. Add in the win today. See no reason not to continue said change in tactic. LeQuint was great last week. I think he'll do it again. 100 yards on the ground and a touchdown. BC is allowing 140 a game on the ground. Slightly worse than mid-pack, 10th best in the ACC. Dream outcome today would be to see a little more Oronde Gadsden than we have been seeing here of late. Give me 7 for 85 at a tutty for Oronde today. I think we get to see a little more Oronde. They got to react to Justice Russ Simmons, react to Trevor Pena. Should open up the middle for Oronde Gadsden. Maybe a little play action because of what you're doing with LaQuinn Allen. How about Marlo Wax? Sack and a half last week, forced to fumble, recovered a fumble. Dream outcome, more of the same for Mr. Wax today. He will be involved one way or another in a sack and a turnover. Could it be a pick? Maybe. What will he do? I don't know. I know this. When the game starts, Marlo Wax and the football, they are familiar with each other. Thomas Castellanos, he's a problem for the Orange today, averaging way fewer yards on the ground this year, just about 30. I think he gets loose a little bit today and runs for 60 and a touchdown. And watch out for Lewis Bond. He's not a deep threat. I'm not worried about him beating you deep. I'm worried about Syracuse tackling him. Tackling down the field has been an issue. Got to stop him from sneaking through at some point and breaking one loose. And a dream outcome today that the wind doesn't do anything funky to Syracuse on special teams. Put all that in the blender, spit it out the other end. Final score today, Syracuse remains unbeaten in November this year. The Orange 30 and Boston College 27. We'll see how it all comes together. Then we'll reconvene back here after the game in around 3.5 hours, 3:30-ish. We'll come back here to ESPN Radio, Cuse Sports Talk, on the Twitch, on the YouTube. Join us after the game. Phone lines will be open. We'll get you a little bit of Fran Brown. We'll break it all down, whichever way it goes here today between the Orange and the Eagles. Remember, watch the game on the CW. Listen, of course, down the hall and around the corner on TK99 to the Syracuse Sports Network. All right, enjoy the game, everybody. We're back here afterwards on Cuse Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.
Orange are at home against the